My ultimate end goal with this project is to just better educate the people out there on what is available for spey casting and how all this tackle goes together in the most effective, balanced way. There's a lot of confusion out there, and there's a lot of forums, and there's a lot of misguided information. There's a lot of people who just don't know, and I think what we're doing here is just going to try and simplify that. I personally believe every steelhead angler out there, whether he owns a double-handed rod or not, can be better and should want to be better, not only for his personal self, but for the fish. And that's why I got better. We're fishing for one of the classiest fish on the face of the planet, one of the most prestigious animals you can catch. And I think by not wanting to up your game, you're not doing justice to the fish you're fishing for. So in the end, understanding all this makes your time on the water spent more productively, and the steelhead chased and pursued in a way that's more convenient for you and better for the fish. That was nice. First run of the day, I don't think we've made 50 casts and we're up 2-0. Good. I want people to catch more steelhead. And I want people to catch more steelhead flies because they're making better, cleaner, consistent casts. Everybody's getting better, but we can be better. And more people moving quickly through the runs, making efficient casts that'll catch steelhead. That's what it's about. Clean casts, clean presentations. You know, there's no secret to it. The better you get at it, the faster you move, the more steelhead you catch, and that's one of the reasons we're out here doing what we're doing, is to help people become clean casters, clean anglers. There we go. Fish on. There we go. Low and slow for these steelhead. Oh, yes!
That's a nice fish.
Oh, now he's super angry. Now he's coming to life again. Oh, you dirty, dirty little gal. Get after it, buddy. Get after it. There he is. That is how you catch winter steelhead on a fly. The most talked about things are often the first forgotten. So the fundamentals throughout this video and throughout your casting should become almost redundant. You should get tired of hearing about it. This morning, we're going to go over some things, some very fundamental parts of spey casting. Regardless of your line system, we're going to talk about some things that's going to make all your casting better and more rounded. I see, as a guide, I see a lot of problems on the river with casting in general, and as a casting instructor, I see even more. And it's fundamentals that not a lot of people are talking about. Some little things that make the cast go well that have not that much to do with the actual casting. The first thing I'd really like to talk about is how people grip the rod. Most people grip their spey rods almost like single-handed rods, like a tool. You can find the guys that are really good at spey casting, are really good at their single-handed casting, fly fishing in general. They hold their rods relatively light. And that's so we can achieve the action of the rod. The more we grip the rod, we actually choke the action out of it. And the more we want to muscle the rod, the more we shove, the more we push, the more these things happen. And the first fundamental thing I'd like to talk about is gripping the rod lightly. In spey casting, we've all heard the term in the box. And what that is, it's an imaginary square around your torso from your belly button to your chin, just outside your shoulder width. Keeping your hands inside the box keeps control of the line. But if we grip the rod properly, we don't have to worry about being outside the box because it's almost impossible for us to get outside of that box. So what I do is I like to grab the rod kind of on its balance point here, and all I do is line my thumbs up, reel the point straight down at the water. Literally every cast, gravity will help the rod turn. It's real easy every time you cast to get a good setup. Just like a golf club, we're going to grip, line the thumb straight up the back. Line the thumb straight up the back. In line. Rods are built with the spine going up the back of the rod, so you're just going right up the spine. And once we've gripped the rod properly, we're pushing it just against the top two fingers of each hand, and we're not gripping it with our fists. The next most crucial thing to every spey cast, snap tees, snake rolls, your single spays, your double spays, whatever you want to be, is the lift. Now our lift with the spey rod does a couple of things for us. Number one, it takes all the slack out of the line. Slack is definitely the worst thing you can get in spey casting. Anytime you become disattached, let's say like this, I can't cast this line now. I can lift it, can't even get it out of the water. That's slack. So the lift gets that slack out of the water, the initial slack. Once you lift, the lift sets the speed for the entire cast. This is a problem most people have, is they lift too fast, and right here they introduce slack into the line solely based on the speed of their lift. I heard a term once, spey casting should be called slow casting. And it's true. The slower I lift, the more tension I build, the less slack there is. Now as a benefit, when you get those really nice slow lifts, you get very clean anchors and you gain control of the fly line. And when we talk about the lifts on a single spey, switch cast, single spays, your snake rolls, you get one lift per cast, which is great. Single spey, we lift, we turn, we go. Great. On our sustained anchor casts, our double spays and our snap tees, there are two lifts. And this is another crucial thing that a lot of guys aren't talking about. We lift for our setup, we stop, we lift again to do the cast. The second lift being just as important as the first lift. The second lift is neglected in most cases. I see a lot of what I would call ninja spey casting from the setup on. This, great, everything was good. A little aggressive. This is what most guys are doing with these casts. They're hitting them way too hard. They're losing control after that initial lift. So let's slow that lift down, lift up nice, slow, easy, gain control of the line, put it where you want it. We talked about how our lift should be nice and slow and easy, gaining control of the rod. The next fundamental thing, again, regardless of your line system, is going to be your anchor placement. Your anchor placement becomes a crucial part. A well-placed anchor forms well-placed loops, and it determines how much power it's going to take to deliver the cast. You know, the standard equation in our industry for anchor placement is within a rod length of you, right? But if I take this rod like this, is a 13-foot 7-inch rod. If I take it like this and I go in a rod length of myself, we're talking that's 28 feet, 27 feet. It's a lot of places to put your anchor, right? So let's be more precise. Where should our anchor be? Right now I've got my right hand up, so I'm casting right-handed, and we're on the left side of the river. I don't think your anchor can be put out toward mid-river far enough. If your anchor goes out this way and stays out this way, there's a lot of benefits to the cast. Most instructors nowadays are instructing on a perpendicular line. feet spread shoulder width apart, in line. Not only do you have no balance front to back, but you don't have the ability to move, and you don't have the ability to give direction to the line. So when we talk about placing the anchor, it's all relative to our hips. What I like to do is I hold the rod like this against my hips. And this line determines whether the anchor is behind me or in front of me. You can all see that. So if I want to cast out into the river, I have to turn my hips to the angle I want. And I don't want any anchor back past here, you can see the line, or inside of here on my downstream anchor casts. This is your line. So a perfect anchor will be in front of this. The D-loop should just come back, and that'll help deliver the angle. We're all about that 180 degree principle. The back cast has to be 180 degrees from the forward cast. This hip line, this is how you gauge it on a perpendicular level here. So, let's set a couple anchors. I'm going to do a couple of circle casts or snap tees, and we're going to look at where that anchor lands. Again, slow lift, out, stop. We can see my anchor there is even over a rod length out in front of me. So the benefits of that, number one, the further out in the river I can put my anchor, the more line goes that way. During the cast, the less line comes behind me. So the closer I can fish to the bank. And in some of these situations in which you cover where you're actually fishing for steelhead, you might be right up next to the bank. So the further out I can put that one's almost twice a rod length out, the less line comes behind me during my actual rotation and forming of my D-loop. The further out, just remember, you cannot put it out far enough. Let's talk about the next thing is how far upstream do we want it? Well, with this line, we have a mid-bellied line on here today. I like to wear, if I'm going to do a single spay, there's that rod length out in front of me, but I like the anchor, or the terminal end of the fly line, to be upstream of me, just upstream of me, here. That's going to give me enough time to form a decent D-loop and line it up for my forward cast. If we get these things too far upstream or in too close to us, we get some weird happenings with the line. And it's fairly common. You know, the line system's getting shorter and shorter nowadays. You're actually having deficiencies in your cast that you may not be able to see on short casts because the lines are so short. With this longer line, if I really put an anchor way upstream, I have to use some force to get it to go. And we've all been there. We've all had to muscle the cast. But the more correct and better placement I have, the easier it becomes to make that forward stroke. The less energy I put in the forward cast, to me, means a better placed anchor to begin with. Is there timing in that? Yeah. You're gonna have to practice on your timing. Fortunately, the practice on spay casting timing comes while you're fishing. I mean, I hate to say you have to go fishing to practice your casting, but in our world, that's as bad as it can get. So keep those anchors out in front of you. Another benefit to proper anchor placement and adhering to our hip line is the shape of your loop. We've all been out there and we've seen our buddies and other casters on the river, and they throw these really pointy, dart-shaped loops. And the only really way to achieve that is to use your line for how it's made to be used. Spay lines nowadays, even your Skagit lines, are tapered. They're typically heaviest in the back and they taper forward. And that taper's designed, the weight's in the back and the taper's designed to pull itself from the water. So I do a drill with people that's real easy. It's a 6-cast drill. And I make 3 casts, just switch casts, where I've actually put my anchor behind me. I make 3 where I put my anchor in front of me. And I ask people which one they want theirs to look like. Which loops are better? And I'm going to do that for you right now. I'm going to purposely put 3 casts behind me and 3 casts in front of me. And I want you, based on anchor placement, to tell me which loops look better. We'll go behind it first. Behind. Behind. We'll go in front. In front. In front. As you can see, I hope most of you wanted those loops that landed in front of me. The dynamic shape of the loop, much tighter. They hold equal amount of line speed as they go forward. That tighter loop is going to cut the wind better, it's going to carry better. That big open loop, you lose a lot of energy to the resistance of the air. The bigger your loop is, typically means energy went up high, dissipated, and you get a lot of like drifting leaders on your longer casts. It's because your anchor back behind you. A lot of spey casting has really nothing to do with how much muscle or how athletic you are. It's all about control. In common sense, if I make one good cast, even though I take my time and do it a little slower and not rush, the cast you rush, you might be in the trees, you might be in the grass, it's going to take you minutes to get back out and get going. Or you blow your anchor, you make a crappy cast, you got to make another one. It's just time wasted when you could have just gone slower with a little more control in these areas. You know, one of the advantages to fishing with a two-handed rod is the simple fact your fly has the ability to be in the water more. The longer your fly's in the water, you know, it's simple math, the better opportunity you have for fish. Flies that aren't in the water don't catch a lot of fish. Tied on premium hooks and made with outstanding materials, Montana Fly Company keeps paving the way in production of the newest and most innovative fly patterns, keeping all of our boxes filled with the best the world's commercial tires have to offer. This fish here's got a little bit more piss and vinegar than some of them. Montana Fly Company. It's all about the bugs. The fly's only about 1/8 of an inch deep. So usually this time of year, if they take it, it's pretty good visual. The next decent fishing spot's right down there on the corner. So we can pack up real quick and move. Feeling good in here. Come on. This is no secret here, but it is a good run. With every spey cast, we have a change of direction. There's a certain amount of rotating around the axis of our body that occurs with all line styles. With sustained anchor casts, with your touch and go casts. The only exception might be being the snake roll, in which the axis becomes through your chest. But when we talk about the rotation, there's a couple ways you can do it. Most people nowadays are rotating by pulling their hands around their body. This can work well once in a while. Or if you're a guy who's done it for a long time and really works at it, you can get fairly consistent like this. But fairly consistent, for me, isn't good enough. I like consistency that can be gauged easy and by everybody. I believe anybody can cast a spey rod. I've noticed if you are able to move your torso, you can move almost as much line than you can by throwing your arms. So if I lift like this and go like this, I got a couple things going. The fly's out there. I might catch a fish. At the same time, I'm not faced where I'm casting. Anybody who's done anything athletic in their life knows if you're gonna do something directionally, it's best to face that. A baseball pitcher doesn't pitch like this. Just doesn't happen. Even guys, let's take something a little less athletic. You ever thrown darts? Throw darts like this.
not like this. You want to be able to see where you're facing. You want the power to go. People don't punch other people like this either, right? So facing where you're going to go is a big deal. So if I face out here, even pulling around, I get a little over rotation. You can see it. I'm not lined up. The pulling is notorious for inconsistencies in anchor placement. On a scale, I always rate things on a 10 cast scale. I want 9 of 10 on my consistency level. That's what we're working for, 90%. With the arm pulling, I can't say my anchors are flatter or inside. I might be more like 50 or 60%, which if you think about a run takes 100 casts, 60 of them were good. That's terrible. We can do better than that. Some of the runs we don't even cast that far. You'll notice you get a lot more control. You see how flat my anchor landed? There it is perfectly, that rod length out in front of me, forward of my hip. You can see the line as it passes me here. It doesn't wrap around me. It means all my line was out in front of me. There's literally no line behind me in my D-loop to catch anything. So here it is. Rotate. All right, here we go again. We're gonna lift real slow. Slow lift. There's our control. Our grip's good. Look at that clean anchor every time. All I did was turn my body toward my target. That's it. This, I went pretty slow. I'll try an arms one. Slow lift, slow lift. Got a double anchor there. A little serpentine anchor, we call that. That's common. That's common with the pulled rotation. You'll also notice when I pull, my D-loop goes quite a ways back. That was actually good placement, but look at the D-loop. Control of the D-loop, not good. So the rotation, trust the fact if you have good tension in the line, the rotation of your body is enough to get that line around you. Even on your sustained anchor cast. Let's do a snap T. Here, great. Here's our second lift. Now, this line, it's not giant long, but this is a pretty long line for a snap T cast to function where I'm just rotating my body. Here we go. Slow second lift. Just body rotation. Look at the line speed I'm building. It's just about having correct anchor placement, good hands, solid key position. The power in the cast comes from the torso of the body. The faster I can control my rotation, the more line speed I'm gonna get. It's just like a catapult. When you pull the catapult back, that's where the hard work is done. When you let it go forward, you just pull the lever. Here we go, one more time, up and around. Solid second lift. Easy cast. The key position is the pinnacle of our back cast. It's the position our hands get in before we make that forward stroke. Now, there are a lot of casting styles out there, and there's a lot of ways people talk about it. You know, back when I first started spey casting, everybody talked about your belly button, hitting your belly button from your key position, you know, coming across like this, you know, and a lot of the Scandinavian guys, they keep their hands really low, and you the long belly guys are up here. But after spending the time doing it, spending the years spey casting, there are a few things I've seen with every line style and every good cast that are very crucial to making good spey casts. This key position has one of the most. This is one of the most overdone but underestimated parts of the cast. What I like to see in that perfect key position, regardless of line style, wherever your hands are, the butt of the rod and your top hand elbow should be on the same horizontal plane, right? I don't even have to look. My rod should be at that 10 o'clock, 2 o'clock range right there. Here we go. If I put my bottom hand here, you notice everything makes a nice, almost equilateral triangle right there. This is good. Now I know you're back home, you're gonna go, well, I saw a video of a Scandinavian caster and there's no way that that can work. And I've watched the same videos at home, I have them. But if I keep my hands low and I'm here to do my Scandinavian cast, you can see the hands are in the same place. Are they as high up? No. Are they in the same range? Yep, right here. Oh, I've seen those long-bellied guys from Scotland, and they get their hands way up. They do. But if we notice, the elbow and the butt of the rod, regardless of where my hands are height-wise, they're still on that same plane. So regardless of the style of your line or how you like to cast, one fundamental you can always remember: butt of the rod, top hand elbow. This is the perfect key position. You'll also notice both my hands are in front of me where I can see them. This is crucial. This relates right to that other segment with our anchor position. The further my top hand comes behind my head, behind my ear in fact, the odds are the more anchor is behind me. So in that key position, elbow in line, butt of the rod, hands, both hands where I can see them. Keeps everything out in front of us, makes it a lot easier to read the cast, makes it easier to feel the cast, so you'll become a more competent caster. On the other end of that spectrum, when we finish that forward stroke on that perfect ideal, the butt of the rod and my elbow should become on the same vertical line. So we're here, boom, key position, finish position, same. And that gives you the same angle. I know when I come here, I'm at 10. When I come here, I'm at 2. That's going to be your delivery method, and it's easy to see. Even better for you, to practice this, you don't need to go to the river. You can sit home and watch your favorite television program, and you can watch yourself do this. Thumbs in line, rod in line. And you don't even have to leave the house. You can become a better spey caster from your lazy boy at home. We're not being specific to a line style yet. That stuff's still to come. But when a lot of people talk about the forward cast, and I ask people what's wrong with their cast and what's wrong with their other people's caster and casting instruction, I hear a lot of the similar answer. I hear it so often that sometimes they just phrase it differently. And back when I started guiding and spey casting and teaching it myself, I even said these things. And it's a realization that's come to me as I've become a better caster and become a competition caster, is the power application in the forward stroke. Our forward stroke happens when we want to send the line forward, just like on a single-handed cast like this. And what I hear as a spey casting instructor a lot is a guy will throw a bad cast, just a terrible one. And I hear something like this: you didn't use enough bottom hand. Well, I'm sorry to tell you, but before that cast even got to where it needed to go forward, there was 50 problems besides the bottom hand. The next most famous one I hear is, did you use too much top hand? Which to me is the same thing as needing more bottom hand, it's just phrased differently. This is a common thing. Maybe you've even said it to your buddies. Maybe you've heard it said to you. That's not necessarily the case. The power application in a spey rod, yes, you have two hands on the rod. Both of them, when you grab the rod, they're now fused together. They have to be buddies. It's tough to cast like this, but it can be done. Right? So I'm going to do a demonstration right now. I think, based on the bottom hand principle, I shouldn't be able to do this. That's not too bad of a cast. I can cast better than most people, I'd say, one-handed with a floating line. Now, based on the bottom hand principle, that cast shouldn't have even gone anywhere, but it did. Had a nice tight loop. If the bottom hand was the crucial element in spey casting, why wouldn't we just hold the rod like this? Right? Both hands on the bottom, that's ultimate power. Let's see if we can do this. Works too. Strange. All top hand, all bottom hand. Casts still work. Now the real trick to spey casting and fly casting in general has nothing to do with where the power comes from. There are optimal ways to do it so it's easier on you. But the real trick is the application of power. So when we talk about the application of power on both ends, the back and the front, If the power is applied smoothly with either hand, it's all about stopping the rod. When I stop the rod, that's what transfers the energy into the line. With a well-placed anchor, and we know how the modern lines are designed, they're tapered forward. Once we get the weight of that line going with a stop, it just transfers the energy down the neck of the taper through the line. If I stop high enough, ideally I want the loop to go out parallel to the surface of the water or just incline. I see a lot of things on your casting plane that aren't good. A casting plane is 180 degrees, just like this. And we can grade ourselves in our forward cast with how it flies, the flight of the line of the forward cast. We get a lot of common problems. One of the main common problems is you get a downward forward loop. It's real easy to fix. So if you're out there and all of a sudden your line's going like this and crashing very firmly into the water, you have your rod's probably somewhere around the 11 o'clock, 11:30, and you're coming down. So your casting plane looks like this, right? It's the same angle of degree, you're just throwing your loop down. At the same time, if you go too far back in the back, you should get a loop that goes real skied, real aerialized. If I go way back in the back, I get that nice, real high drifting, no speed kind of loop. Let's do that again. Way down in the back. And I get, I'm lobbing them basically. And we've all thrown the lobber, and if there's any kind of wind into you, well, that doesn't go anywhere. You get a tailwind, maybe you get a little help. But if we just do it right to begin with, and we can get those angles of the rod driven home, you're going to make a lot better casts, you're going to move a lot faster. Parallel to the water or on a slide incline is good. When we talk about how much power is needed, I hinted on it in the anchor placement. And when the closer your anchor is to perfect, the easier forward stroke is. I always like to draw a target. I picture a target right here. And that perfect has the red dot. Kinda good, yellow circle. We get into that blue circle, that outside ring, it's okay. Outside of that, you're gonna be using a lot of energy and your cast might not go as well. You're not gonna have the loop, you're not gonna have the line speed you want. In fact, the cast may fail depending on how far from that it is. So I'm gonna do some casts here. We're gonna talk about forward application power, where I don't even use much energy. I'm just gonna tap them off with as little energy as I can to see. And in fact, we'll do it. Well, I don't know if I can hit them much softer. We'll try. Ready? Still turned over. Let's see how slow I can go, and they don't turn over. Ooh, even that one made it out. You don't have to have a lot of juice. When that anchor hits right, everything's lined up. Life is good. First one that kind of failed, and I hit that one pretty soft. All right, so we're going to talk about this. I'm actually going to get to a point on this cast where I'm going to let gravity take over the tip of the rod and literally let the rod go. And we'll see how well the cast goes out. Still turned over. Rod still was able to deliver enough energy, just gravity feeding it, that it turned this line over. Now, is this line crazy long? No, it's about 50 feet and there's about a 13-foot leader on there. That's not the point. You saw that I did nothing in the front but let the weight of the rod go, and it still was able to turn the line over. That should give you an idea that this might be a little aggressive on your forward stroke. In fact, the more noises I hear when people are casting, the worse the casting technique is. If you hear something like this, probably wasn't a great cast. You might be in the bushes, you might have a pile of line out in front of you. It's not that great. Another bad cast. When we're out here in nature, if you're hearing your line rip, not only using too much energy, but you're not hearing the things. When I come out and I'm spey casting and I'm steelhead fishing, I can hear the birds, and I can hear the flow of the river. I hear things, I hear the wind, I hear myself think. It's great. It's never really disturbed by the cast. If the sound of your cast is disturbing the nature of the river, you're using way too much energy. Streetwalker, just classic hair-wing stuff. Most of your summer steelhead fishing, we use full floating lines, hair-wing flies. It's good stuff. There is no funner way to take them. I knew it, I felt him, I smelled that son of a gun. That's a good one.
Oh, that's a nice fish.
Oh, now he's super angry. Now he's coming to life again. Oh. He's trying, and he's off.
Oh, he went all the way down to the boulders there.
He broke now. Oh. And whether that fish is 3 pounds or 30 pounds, they're all fun. Pro Tube by Pro Sport Fisher and distributed in the States by Pro Solution has become the muse of choice for the modern steelhead and Atlantic salmon fly tyer. Used by the industry's best for their tying and creative needs, Pro Tube should be found anywhere people are serious about casting to anadromous fish. I want people to catch more steelhead, but I want people to catch more steelhead flies because they're making better, cleaner, consistent casts. Everybody's getting better, but we can be better. And more people moving quickly through the runs, making efficient casts that'll catch steelhead. That's what it's about. Clean casts, clean presentations. There's no secret to it. The better you get at it, the faster you move, the more steelhead you catch, and that's one of the reasons we're out here doing what we're doing, is to help people become clean casters, clean anglers. So it's starting to feel real good in here right now. It'll be real feathery light to this one. I don't think a sport would have got that fish.
What is that? Way out there?
Oh yeah, way off that scene out there.
Ooh. Oh yeah. Good fish.
Get us both in the shot. Thanks for the tailing, brother.
Oh yeah.
These big fish. That's all at 12 pounds there.
Yeah.
To shoot summer steelhead. I like when you turn them like this and these inside scales get iridescent like that.
Yeah.
You turn them this way. Cool. You see how you turn them this way? They're green.
Yeah. Now they're iridescent.
Yeah.
That's.
Should be pretty.
Oh yeah.
Nice. Here we are, late season undershoots. Pretty cold. December's come up time. It's definitely sink tip season. I haven't checked the water yet, but it's probably
hovering around 40. I think the high of the day is going to be about 30. So we'll see what we can do. We're starting up here, a little right in the town of Maupin. Fish are pretty widespread through the system by this time of year. Still got some freshmen showing up. We'll see what we can do. Hopefully we find a fish or two. We're going to be primarily focused on Skagit lines and sink tips. You know, we want to get the fly down below the surface current, slow it down, give the fish the opportunity to come up and take it. You don't need huge flies, but you got flies that are 2.5 to 3 inches long. And my favorite late season colors out here on the Deschutes anyway, they're going to be bright. As the fish become sexually mature themselves, they get a little more rambunctious, and those bright colors seem to really bring out some reaction from time to time. Gonna change up, we got a nice tube fly here. Tube rides on the leader, we put a hook at the terminal end. An aggressive response from the fish. Typically the males this time of year becoming sexually mature. And I feel, you know, looking back on my journals, the bucks have responded well during their maturing stage to brighter colors, oranges, pinks. But again, if what you got rolling's not working so much, don't be afraid to change, right? Variety is the spice of life. There we go. Low and slow for these steelhead. Oh, yes! That's what I'm talking about there. Oh, that's the exciting part. That grab, there's nothing like it. This is a good fish here. It's a thick fish. The best time to catch a steelhead is right after you've already caught one. They're almost never alone. So let's go back to the top of the run and we'll start over. We thought today with this, you know, really cold water temperature, cold air temperature, we're gonna get some soft grabs, but that was the exact opposite. I felt just a little pluck. By the time I could even react to that, line was coming off the reel. You know, it's one of those things, you don't want to do too much. You know, don't overthink it, just let the fish eat the fly, let the hook find a place in that fish's mouth. You can see that fish was buried nice in the corner of the face. Good hold. The only way that fish was coming off is to break off. So you saw during the course of the fight and the hook set, I leaned the rod to the bank we're standing on here. It's always a much better way to fight a fish, keeping that angle on the fish. Lifting straight up or toward the river, you always risk pulling the fly from the fish. But first off, you just gotta let them take that fly. You gotta let them have at it. There's almost nothing like it on the planet. I might have been cool a few minutes ago, but I'm plenty warm now. What I really want to talk about right now is one of the most confusing parts of our industry. And I first off want to apologize as being somebody in the market, in the industry, that is confusing you, is how and when to use the lines and the line systems we have. There's a lot of confusion based on the sinking types of materials. Number one, sinking poly leaders versus sink tips. Right, so we get a lot of confusion there. And what is the advantage of one? What is the advantage of the other? And again, where does each one go? Right, that's a big deal. So we're first going to look at sinking poly leaders here. So we have a sinking poly leader. Now a poly leader, you know, we get a sink rate. And again, this is a leader. And all sink tips and leaders should be thought about as leaders. They're not actually part of the head systems at all. These are the leaders, and that's how we need to think of them. So our poly leader here, it says fast sinking poly leader, and it sinks at 3.9 inches a second. Now, that's based on sinking in still water, not moving water. Okay, so we know if we're fishing in a lake that this would fish roughly 3.9 inches a second, it would sink. At the same time, nowadays, we have these tungsten lined sink tips, lined with tungsten. And there's a T material, typically there'll be T8, T11, T14, T17, and now T20. The T stands for tungsten, and the number behind the T stands for number of grains of tungsten per foot. Herein lies the problem as we get to the issue of density, right? So we have this, let's say they both sink at 4 inches a second. The density and the castability becomes a different scenario based on what we want to do. Now, they both sink at the same rate, but the densities aren't the same. And the analogy would go, if I had 1,000 pounds of foam and 1,000 pounds of lead, they weigh the same, but one's going to find the bottom of the river a lot faster than the other. So herein lies the delivery system and the methodologies we need to choose. Our sinking polyliter, you know this one here, roughly might weigh 75 to 80 grains. And it's 10 feet long. So let's look at our line systems we use to deliver these things. Here I have an Elixir, a Beulah Elixir. It's a Scandinavian style taper. And on this it says 375 grains at 31 feet. If I take the grain weight and I divide it by the length, what I get is an average grains per foot, right? This number is key in choosing the density of the object we cast. Now, there is no way, we're going to get somewhere below 10 on this, or right around. So our T11s and our T14s are not going to cast well because they're very comparable densities to the line we're casting. That's a problem. At the same time, we have a more Skagit style taper, a Beulah Tonic here, and it's 525 grains at 26 feet. Our grains per foot are going to go way up. And in that, our density is going to change, right? This is going to be able to move a piece of T material a lot easier than our longer, lighter line. So we get a lot of confusion. And I think we need to talk about the sinking poly liters, go with Scandinavian lines. Sink tips, your density compensator tips, your tungsten line sink tips, these go with Skagit style lines. Now I've heard guys that say, I cast T8 and T11 on my Scandi line. You probably can. The best reason not to is you're going to teach yourself bad habits and you're going to teach yourself casting techniques to make that work that aren't going to work well with anything else. So a well-balanced line system should still maintain the same fundamentals of casting that we've talked about before. Another thing we run into is the size of fly you can cast. Right? The denser the object you're casting, the larger the fly you're able to cast. Our T materials are going to cast larger flies a lot easier than this lighter, more supple, less dense leader. Right? So when we're talking fly size, we again talk mass, density. These poly leaders will handle smaller flies like so. These will sink these relatively well. Some of these real lightly weighted flies that don't have a ton of mass, we still may be able to cast these. The minute we get into stuff like this poly leader is not going to have the mass to turn this big fly over effectively at any fishable distance. There again, if we go with the Skagit line and the T material, we're able to, mass moves mass, we're now able to cast these heavier flies, fishable distances, and still turn them over. Skagit lines, dense tips, big flies. Scandinavian tapers, light flies, sinking leaders. I think one of the biggest discrepancies in modern spey casting equipment is understanding the terminology and the placement of sink tips and sinking poly leaders. One of the factors we get is that sink tips go with Skagit style lines. These carry a lot more mass, a lot more density, as do these short, heavy lines, right? So we got heavy, dense sink tips, shorter, heavier lines. These lighter, less dense leaders go with longer, lighter lines, your Scandinavian tapers. So we almost never, ever put sinking poly leaders with Skagit lines. And at the same time, we veer from putting T material or real bona fide sink tips on Scandinavian lines. right? They just don't balance well due to the density and the mass. Second off, we try and veer from putting really heavy flies on Scandinavian tapers. They don't balance well, they don't cast well. We can put any of these flies to an extent on here, but for straight mass, these go well with smaller, lighter flies, and these go well with these bulky, heavier flies. So Scandinavian tapers, lighter flies. Skagit tapers, bulkier, denser flies.
That was the best grab of the day right there. Just crushed it. Nice, beautiful fish. Beautiful wild fish. Came in here to the top of where I would start this particular run. I started short, I started with a foot of fly line in the sink tip. Out, nothing special at all. And again, this time of year, it's colder, we're not gonna move 6 feet between each cast, and just a couple of feet. And I think the third or fourth cast, not too far out at all. Fish were sitting right there. Of the fish we've hooked today, that one definitely was the best grab to it. We wouldn't have started short. If we'd have just gone straight to the shooting head all the way out, we would have missed that fish completely. So when you start a piece of water, always start short. Start short and gain reward. See a lot of anglers nowadays casting way too far for the water they're in, and not covering the water they get efficiently. Spey rod's a great tool for getting the line out there, but if you're not going to use it, you still got to do everything incrementally, even with the long rod. Just should make everything easier. It's not necessarily about casting further or going faster. It's a lot about control. I'm going to add one more pull line here, and we're worried mainly about everything from here to that fast water. As soon as the fly gets out there to that fast water, just like that, you're good. That's fishing awful nice in there. There was another one. That would be a good swing to get it on. Same transition water. But you get them where you get them, and they are where they are.
Some people will use a symbolism of the relationship of God to the universe. God is a brilliant light, only somehow veiled, hiding underneath all these forms that you see as you look around. So far, so good. But the truth is funnier than that. It is that you are looking right at the brilliant light now, that the experience you are having, which you call ordinary...
This feels more like a white man steelhead here.
Pretending you're not it.
Classic grab, 5-pound fish. Come here, buddy. I like the other size we were getting, but steelhead are steelhead. Beautiful. Little hatchery fish, late in the year. He's got a maxillary missing, at least he's a Deschutes fish. Solid 5 pounds. Took the fly, you can't blame him for that. Beautiful fish. Sink tip fishing, late summer fish. That nice soft transition water, that slow water. You might not get those electric takes as on a floating line, but it's a great way to catch steelhead. It's also a good primer for your winter fishing as well.
We got our first fish today at like 12:30 or something like that. So you can see right around, I just had a big grab. 12:30 or so, and then I think we got hooked another fish. It was like 2:30, so we just landed one up here. So that, again, it's fitting in that 1 to 4 kind of category. We fished great water this morning, but the conditions aren't right. And that's the thing about being a steelheader. You got to be on the water when everything's right, you know. If you're hearing about the news, you're not making the news. Just had a really nice grab in here. Let's try that again. Slower water down here below this riffle along this tree line. And you get that colder water, they'll pull into that. We've been finding the majority of the fish today and it's softer, kind of inside water. Just make sure that sink tip can come all the way in. That's the big deal. If you got sink tips that can't come all the way into that soft water, they're too heavy, you're not fishing. Good day. Started out cold, kind of froze our butts off. Stuck with it, persistent. Ended up putting a few fish to the beach. Hooked a couple others, was good. It was a good day. That's what steelhead fishing's all about. You know, being out here, taking in nature, giving yourself the opportunity, hanging out with good people, good buddies. Good day.
Made in the heart of Oregon's historic steelhead past, Beulah Fly Rods have provided functional and beauty at an affordable price. Top quality products designed here by anglers for anglers.
There we go. Low and slow for these steelhead. Oh, yes!
With the most pristine components and finishes, the versatile two-handers on today's market are made by Beulah.
Today we're going to talk about some Skagit casting. We're going to talk about how Skagit casting relates to fishing and how it relates to the dichotomy of spey casting itself. A lot of the fundamentals of spey casting, actually all the fundamentals of spey casting, relate to the Skagit cast. The idea that you technically change what you do based on your line style is not necessarily the case. Good technique with your mid-bellied lines, good technique with your Scandinavian lines is still good technique with your Skagit lines. Can you do all of the same casts? Yes, but there are better ways to do it. And for the delivery system of throwing sink tips and large flies, a Skagit line does it best, and it does it with the most conservation of energy. So we're going to talk about the fundamentals of our Skagit casting. Like with all our spey casts, you're going to notice the first thing and the most important thing, often the most overlooked aspect of spey casting, is the lift. And in most of your Skagit style casts, your sustained anchor casts, you have 2 lifts. One to do the setup, and the second lift goes into the sweep, leading into your key position. So when we talk about lifts, with a Skagit line, which is a relatively short line, nowadays Skagit lines go anywhere from 18 to 27 feet. So we're talking with short, heavy stuff. So this lift here, it's not going to be back to us, right? And honestly, the slower we can make it and the straighter we can make it, the more control we get. And that's what it's about, is being able to control the lift to set the anchor placement you need. All right? So lift, both hands, up, slow. The idea is to gain control of the line, remove the slack, get the line tracking toward you. The heavier the fly you have, the higher the lift will be. So you'll have to extend more with your arms. If we lift like so, we run into problems where we run out of movable area with our arms and we get things like this. We've all done that. We need to avoid that. If we can lift away from ourselves, even with really heavy stuff, we still get good control of where we can put our anchor, and we gain control of the Skagit line and the fly. The second aspect that we really want to fundamentalize in all the casts we do, let alone with Skagit casting, is when we stick to the sustained anchor cast of your snap tees and your double spays, we really need to look at the planes of our cast and where we're going to put that anchor. Anchor control is key in all casting, but with a sink tip and a big fly, it becomes even more pronounced. The shorter the line gets, the narrower your window is. So when we talk about anchor placement, I like to divide things up into quadrants, right? The idea is if I take my rod like this and I hold it to my shoulders,
What's in front of my rod is in front of me. What's behind my rod is behind me. Seems pretty simple until you put angle to the current, until you try not to follow the bank anymore. When you really relatively look at where you're at, out in the river and other places, front and back becomes a different thing. Most people teach spey casting two-dimensionally, 90 degrees to the river. This is easy, this is front, this is back. But when we actually fish, and we want to set a line, even for some of the distance casting I do, what was now behind me is technically in front of me. What was once in front of me is technically behind me. And this is key in where we want our anchor placed. We talk about slow lift. We want the anchor out in front of us. The further out we can put our anchor, the less line comes behind us, the more control the speed of the line we get. When we talk about our forward and back plane, anchor remains in front. When we talk about our right to left plane, that's a different key. I use my sternum. We're going to use an object in the distance here. I'm going to put the rod right in my sternum. Everything to the left of the rod is in my left quadrant. Everything to the right of the rod is in my right quadrant. Now this becomes a crucial thing, especially when we're casting down and across. If we're casting 90, make more sense, but we don't ever really want to do that. So when I go to and I actually set an anchor, I want to make sure all aspects of my anchor and my line as I come around, they're in this quadrant. It's easy. It's going to work. The biggest thing I see isn't that the anchor's out of the quadrant, isn't that the rod's out of the quadrant, it's the hands. If your hands are not in the same quadrant, if your key position is here and you're splitting that line, there's almost impossible to keep your rod going in a straight line. It's almost impossible. And if I know your rod's not going in a straight line, it's definitely not going toward your target, and it's definitely going to land with some jankiness on the water. There's going to be curves, there's going to be gives, and you're going to lose power or have to add power to the cast to get it to go. So the first thing we're going to talk about here, we've got our slow lift, we've got our forward plane, we've got our right to left planes. Steel just rolled out there. Where do we put these planes? So we're going to start first off with our snap T cast. It's probably the most common cast done on most rivers with any line setup actually. So it's very common. We're going to come up, we're going to lift, we're going to get in control of the line. I'm going to come around. Now, getting that there wasn't the problem. What I've learned is if I break this top wrist during the setup, I relieve the line and it goes somewhere else, like this. Now I'm not in my box. The line actually lands behind me. If I can keep that wrist straight during the setup, here, anchor lands well over a rod length away from me, out in my quadrant. This is going to help a lot with our D-loop, our back cast. So we've got lift, setup, good. We've come all the way to where we started the cast. The next fundamental of all casts, and especially with these casts, is the path of the rod tip leading into your key position. This is number one, where your second lift occurs, and the path of your rod helps to shape your D-loop. If your rod path is off, you will have discrepancies in your D-loop and you will lose power. You will introduce slack, basically. So if I come around like this and then go up, we can see right in here, we get some weirdness in our D-loop. And I guarantee that's not going to be good for our forward cast, right? We got all kinds of stuff going on here. If we were to keep a nice elevated plane, and by elevated plane I mean from our lift to our key position, gaining height the entire time, we can go slower and we can produce more power. I'm going to show you what we're talking about here. Good solid lift. Boom. Here's the second lift. We rotate, up, up, up. Smooth. D-loop stays almost out in front of me. Anchor stays in front of me. This is going to allow you, over the course of your fishing, to fish closer to the bank and gain more control of the line. "13-foot 7-inch 7-weight, a little longer, makes casting a little easier, a little more relaxed. And because it's got a nice soft load in the butt, it is going to chuck these sink tips like you've never seen." Talk about rod action, we're going to talk a lot about recovery. It's not how deep you can get the rod to bend, it's how quickly it can go from bent to straighten that makes a difference in the rod. So a fast action rod will go very fast. Slow action rod, quite slow, but you know, you can have a deep loading rod that recovers relatively quickly, and that's what you get here with this rod. When you talk about grain weights and things, and you start to see that your Skagit line setup will be semi-comparable to your mid and long belly setup in range of grain weight. I mean, this is a piece of carbon. It doesn't know anything but how much weight is applied to it. So all those match up, you're gonna get good casts, it's gonna be balanced. So I think we're putting a 525 Skagit on here. I like a 510 Arrowhead on here. I think both those are pretty comparable. They both cast really well. I think Scandi lines, we're going about 450, 430, right in that range. Get you right off the tip. Scandi lines are supposed to come nice and easy off the tip, so nice. Maxima, there is no substitute. Late season summer steelhead today. Back out here on the lovely Deschutes River in Central Oregon. Let's reach into our bag of goodies and see what we got. Got a Bruce Berry Rambulance here, Montana Fly Company fly. It's on a Pro Tube. And again, tube flies, the tube just slides onto the leader. Now, one of the great things about tube flies is we get to apply our favorite stinging hook, trailing hook, whatever you want to call it. I use my favorite face stabber. Gamakatsu split shot drop shots are my favorite. Octopus hooks, pretty good. There's a lot of hooks I like, there's a lot of hooks I don't like, so if you have your preference, it's good, because on a tube fly, you can use whatever hook you want. Solid hook flies, you're pretty committed to whatever you tied on. Tube flies, not so much. They become pretty versatile. First pull on the slot machine. There's two things I hate when I'm sink tip fishing. It's hooking the bottom and losing flies. Typically when you're doing either of these things, you're not catching many fish. There we go. Fish on. And just like that, we start our day. Anglers up on the steelhead. Any day you hook the steelhead's a good day. You hook one in the first run of the day, it's even better. So you can course them around that rock. There we go. It's hard not to be into this. Beautiful color on him. You see the fins are turning red. This guy's getting sexually mature. You can see the white tips on them. That blue and purple fly has really been working for us with that hint of orange. Make sure this colder water to hold more oxygen. These fish got to go. You know, we don't like to keep them out of the water for any length of time, but we're going to treat them as nice as we can. Take a look at our fly. Everything looks good. Beautiful. We start the day up one. That's good. Got visual confirmation of a follow, so I'm gonna make a few more extra. There he is. Yeah. Thanks for the heads up, Bruce. Ooh, it's a bigger fish. Ooh, little hen. Beautiful fish. Oh, oh, you dirty, dirty little gal. Beautiful fish, still pretty bright for this time of year.
Gorgeous. That's why you fish with your buddy. Thanks, Bruce. Let's get you out of here. That was nice. First run of the day, I don't think we've made 50 casts and we're up 2-0. Good. We've talked about setting our anchor. We've got a good solid lift. We control the line. We set our anchor in our appropriate quadrant. When we talk about the rod path, and once we get that setup established here, this second lift here is key to getting on a good plane and again, removing any slack that may have been put in to the setup. A lot of people do their setups relatively quickly. We can introduce slack that way as well, right? Like that's slack, but if I lift slow, guess what? Good plane. We can still recover that cast with a solid lift and good rod path from the start of our second lift to our key position. We can establish still a good cast. Now, the rod path again, we want it to always incline. As a guide and a steelhead fisherman myself, I would rather have you make your forward cast from 12 down than from 9 around. One is going to get the fly out there somewhat effectively, the other one is not. The other one's going to kill you throughout the duration of a day. So as we come around, up, 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 perpetually inclining, even though I didn't go very fast, I kept good tension in the line. The perpetual incline helps us to gain that control, gives us space off the water to form a D-loop. It's one of the biggest misconceptions I've ever heard in spay fishing, honestly, is that the biggest D-loop holds the most power. I thought about that for a long time. I said, how's that work, right? Biggest D-loop. Then it hit me, well, my line's only 25 feet long. How big can my D-loop really be? I mean, honestly, with a Skagit line that's 25 feet, what kind of D-loop can you get? Maybe 11 feet, maybe 10 feet with the discrepancies from river to rod tip. So as we come around here, as we go up, first, we're clearing all that Skagit line, all that thick line off the water. The size of our D-loop is relative to our anchor placement and the tip of our rod. The technical definition of a D-loop is the aerialized line from the anchor point to the tip of the rod. Regardless of where I put that anchor, to achieve any kind of castable D-loop, the D-loop is going to be the same size. That ratio is set by the length of our line. So, 25-foot line, just to prove we're working with it here, let's put the anchor way out there. Great, was able to do a nice cast there. At the same time, it's not going to be as pretty or as smooth. We'll put one here. All right, same size D-loop, a little close, but we got that away. You saw, no matter where I put the anchor placement, the D-loop relative to the water and the tip of the rod was the exact same size. You can't really make them bigger. You make them faster, you can't make them bigger. So the rod path, always inclining. Nice D-loop, good form. Now the rotation of the body and the sweeping of that second lift into your key position, let's talk about the key position. We talked about it with our floating line stuff. The key position is your firing position. It's when all the things have come together. And for me, the biggest thing with the key position, everybody talks about this 10 and 2 angle of traditional fly casting. Great. But when we're spay casting, we don't have time to go like this and go, yeah, that's 2 o'clock, right? Nobody does that, especially with these long rods. The tip of the rod is out of the field of our field of view anyway. So what I've come up with is a way to kind of gauge it yourself. As I come around to face my target, when my top hand elbow and the butt end of the rod form that right angle triangle, this is power. I already know I'm at 2 o'clock or 10 o'clock. So here we are as I come around. My key position's right there. Now you can see it. They're almost on the same plane. Good form, good right angle triangle. That's power. I can almost make most casts if I achieve this firing position, this key position. If I can achieve it, I can almost make each cast from a static position based solely on you're in the perfect position to accelerate power in a straight line. So the key position does two things. It gets our rod
to that 10 o'clock or 2 o'clock. And number 2, it lines us up with our target. This is the part about the quadrants that most people have problem with. As we go into our key position, if I leave this bottom hand on the left side, we don't have that power. We lose the straight line, we lose the plane of our target. So as I come around, lift, key position, my bottom hand as well, everything's in the right. My anchor, the point of my D-loop, everything's in the right quadrant, both hands. Up and around, up, 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 there it is. Makes that forward stroke really nice. We don't have to overpower it. We don't have to kill it. When you get good key positions, you notice everything smooths, everything slows down. If the more we rush everything. The slower and better we do with our fundamentals, the easier the cast becomes. You can't really get much easier than that. And that's my whole philosophy, is I think every single person can be a spey caster. Are you all going to be world champions? Maybe. Can we all learn to cast schedule lines to catch steelhead on sink tips? I believe so. Slow lift, both lifts, good rod pass, good key position. Now when we talk about the last thing everybody wants to talk about, probably the most overemphasized part of spey casting, is the forward stroke. How hard do we hit it? How hard do we know? When do we go? Well, just like with our floating line on our sink tip, if everything's really nicely done and good tempo and you got good everything, I don't think you really need one. I mean, I can gravity feed that rod tip down, and if I keep everything tight, it's gonna go. Literally, I think I could let go of the rod and let gravity take over. Yeah, there it works, right? You don't even need necessarily a forward stroke if you can get your timing and your fundamentals key into the point. When the moment counts and that line draws tight, let the best you can have matter to keep your mind in the moment. Precision, accuracy, integrity, conditioned beauty. Hatch reels. Starting to feel good down in here. It's got that same nice slow motion, real slow swing that we found other fish in earlier today. You'll notice when you start hooking fish, they're going to be in similar water types, similar swing speeds. Slow flies as opposed to deep flies. The consensus in our industry is the deeper your fly gets, the more fish you catch. I think that's almost hogwash. The slower your fly comes across, the fish's relative depth becomes insignificant to the speed of the fly. Slow fly will trump a deep fly any day of the week. I like the speed of the fly that it's coming across. I like the water we're fishing, the way it's coming through. I've caught fish here before. Very confident in the way the fly is swinging. If a leaf touched that line right now, I'd know. There he is. Shucky darn. That one you knew what it was instantly. You're either gonna eat the fly or they're not. You start begging, you get nothing from them. You beg for attention, they find somebody else. I just want a little grab. I've had clients, I just want to grab, I just want to boil. And you look at them and you go, you don't want to grab and a boil, you want a wild ass hookup that tears down the river and breaks your fly off. You don't want to grab. Good hard grab. I can't tell. This fish might have something to offer us, maybe. Let's see. It looks like a good fish there. Ooh, good color. Ooh. Oh, Brucey. Go ahead, go upstream. There you go. There you. This is gonna be our first wild fish of the day. Oh yeah, beautiful wild buck. Beautiful wild fish. It's nice soft inside water. Kind of called it, was feeling good. Said, probably should be something there. Good hard grab. My hands are freezing up. You've been hooked before. You're a grabber. Oh. Maybe for this, no, I got it. Beautiful fish. Over time, if you really categorize the fish you catch, you'll notice there'll be a lot of similarities in the fish you get, whether it be the speed of the fly or a certain water type, and you get both of them in. You know, we've caught some fish in the past couple of days. It just seems like the exact same stuff we've been getting them in. So for the conditions we have, this feels awful fishy. It feels like if there was a fish there, we'd be getting them. And when you're fishing like that and you've had that success, you should fish with the utmost of confidence.
There he is. Did you see the line?
Still had it on. Come here, you. Ooh, he doesn't like that. Get after it, buddy. Get after it. Oh. The fish is jumping everywhere. It's getting frisky. Nice hatchery fish. Not a Deschutes hatchery fish. This is a stray hatchery fish here. And that is how you catch winter steelhead on a fly. Having a great day. I'm out here having a good time with the film crew, good time fishing. It hasn't warmed up at all, which I'm kind of bummed about. We're still icing up, but we're getting, we're getting some fish. I think we got a lot accomplished today for the end product, and we're having a good time. Had a beer at lunch. It was delicious. Terminal Gravity Pale Ale. The second of our two Skagit casts that we want to talk about, and again, you can do all the casts, but these are the two most popular, is the double spay. And whether you switch hands or you go cack-handed, the fundamentals there are going to be the same. This is going to be a lot similar. You're going to hear redundancies from cast to cast. And these redundancies, these are the fundamentals, the things we keep mentioning. These are the things you need to ingrain. So the first thing is the lift. Sounds familiar. We're going to lift. We're just going to lift like we've done everything else, and I'm going to rotate my body and set my anchor. Now, if I lift straight up like the McDonald's arch, like most people do, and I come straight back over like this, well, my anchor's relatively close to me, which means my D-loop's going to have to go way back. And this is what we're trying to avoid, right? I don't want any part of my anchor or plane outside of my box, right? So I get to about somewhere in here is ideally where I want that. So the further out, again, I can set my anchor, even on this double spay, the more productive it's going to be. So it's up, twist. Wow, that's a lot further out. That's over a rod length out in front of me. That's going to be very helpful when it comes to fishing. Slow lift, rotate the body. Again, we're not breaking our wrists. The rotation back, up, 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 we get to here. Now we see something familiar here. We see where our top hand is going to be. We see our elbow and we see the bottom hand. There's that same firing position on the other side. The cack hand is, you know, the fundamentals of power are gonna be the same. The hand placement, a little different. Sure, it's gonna be. But as I come around, there we are. There it is. There's our 2 o'clock, 10 o'clock plane. There's our power application. So when we go forward, we get the same kind of power we did. Our hands are lined up and we're in a strong position to make a good forward cast. Here we go. Up, 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 up. And away she goes. Shooting a little more line than I was before. That's key. And again, I'm setting that line, my forward cast line with my sternum, right? If I start moving around a lot, and especially moving my feet, that line could change. Slow lift, up, and away she goes. Cack end. Lastly, we're going to do our double spay left-handed here. Same thing, up, out, rotating, come around, forward. Same key positions, same smooth tempo. We're worried about our rod path gaining elevation. These are all the keys. Here we go, up, rotate, and away she goes. Right-handed, left-handed, same powers, same key position, same ultimate rod path, same anchor placement. The fundamentals are the fundamentals. This is what you need to focus on. The most talked about things are often the first forgot. So the fundamentals throughout this video and throughout your casting should become almost redundant. You should get tired of hearing about them. Lift, rotate, up, 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 and away she goes. At the lefty. Up, around through body rotation. Again, we didn't break that top hand wrist. Around, there's our key position, fire it away. Line should land pretty straight and be fishing. Those angles we set with our sternum and our shoulder line, those are in reference to water and current speed. Straight as an arrow. Skagit casting can be fun. It's not necessarily meant to be pretty. Let's talk about that double spay. It's a lift, a body rotation. We've set our anchor. Up, 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 up to our key position. Once we've reached that key position, it's time to go forward. We're not waiting for it. That was our cack, right-handed cack hand, double spay. Right hand dominant. Let's do a right-handed snap T, up. No break in the wrist. The setup was done through body rotation. Up to our key position, and out she goes. Smooth. Not a lot of wasted energy. Let's see both those casts with the left. Left hand double spay, up. Body rotation. Steel at first come into the river. The river changes a lot due to water temperature and turbidity due to the glacial thing and influx of salmon, influx of fish. So runs change and runs become seasonal. That's, again, I tell guys, keep a good journal so you know what water temperature, what times of year that you're in the best stuff. We're in the zone there. Later in the season, got this nice slow water back here on the back side of the island. All the Chinook have cleared out. Some of the great steelhead runs, when the Chinook are in, we lose them. Fill up with Chinook and they'll push the steelhead right out. There he is. Oh, oh. Just had a really good grab. We're gonna pull it in, we're gonna check that hook, make sure it's pointed the right direction. Give it to him again. I just had a really great grab in there. The kind of the ones you're wondering how it didn't hook up. That's part of fishing. had pretty good success with the fish coming back. I think late in the year and the weather we've been having has been keeping people out of here. So the fish don't, fish that aren't pressured, they tend to come back, they'll grab again. Oh, come on. He's just creeping through there, begging for it. My heart is pounding like crazy right now. I am in the juice. When you get in the stuff and your fly's swinging nice and you know that there's a chance that there might be a fish there, if you're a real steelheader, your heart's pounding. Sometimes it's tough to breathe. The anticipation sometimes is almost as good as hooking one. It's part of the game. You never know when you're gonna get them. This guy went on a pretty good run here. Gave us a nice jump. Steelfishes. Oh, steelfish. Beautiful, beautiful fish. Come here, you. You wanted to play the game today. Couldn't stay off that Lady Gaga. This fish here's got a little bit more piss and vinegar than some of them. That is a thick, handsome steelhead. Wild fish too. Nowhere special. We're in a boat ramp. Slow tail out, nice juicy water. Fairly light sink tip. Just could not eat that fly. Healthy wild fish. This is what we want more of in our rivers right here. That's what it's all about. Good times. Can't do it much better than that. Good choice for us picking this run though. High percentage run late in the season. If you kept a journal, you'd know. Sprinkly, a little freezing rain, a little snow on the hills, colder than heck. You know who's out here? AWA and Living Sky Productions. Men amongst boys.
Hi, my name's Bruce Berry. I work with Beulah Fly Rods. We're going to go over switch rods and just talk a little bit about them. I think there's a lot of theory, a lot of hype, a lot of positive, negative. People love them, people hate them. With switch rods to Beulah, I think they're kind of near and dear to us because for a couple of years, these were really probably at the top of the sales game for at least 2 years in a row and kind of create a name that people know in the industry a little bit. And it's small, but I think switch rods were a huge part of our success in staying around. One thing that we find in switch, and early on I think why it's hard or why it's tricky, is they're a little bit tough to line. And I believe there's a couple reasons, and we're going to talk about that right now. Switch rods really, they don't fit the AFTMA single hand rating, where you have X amount of grains in the first 30 feet of line, and they don't fit the AFTMA two-hand standard either, which is a certain amount of grains over 60 feet. So one of the problems that people get really caught up with switch rods is they start promoting it or thinking of it in terms of spay or thinking of it in terms of single hand. We know grains now, we talk grains, we didn't used to. We get a spay rod in a 7-weight that's 13.5 feet and say, oh, this takes a 500 grain Skagit. Nobody raises their hand and says, oh, it's like a 13-weight rod. Why don't they just call it a 13-weight? That happens with switch all the time. We understand how spay rods work and we understand how switch rods work. I think if we treat switches their own category and line them accordingly, we're going to be really good. So for an example, this is an 8-weight switch. I've got a Skagit line, and it's a Skagit switch. We make switch and spay, switch being short, spay being long, and this weighs in at 450 grains. 8-weight spay rods are going to be plus 100, 550, 575 at least. And then the other thing that we figure out with these switch rods is we don't want to ask switch rods to do big spay rod work. Tips can be anywhere from maybe 7 feet to about 12 feet, and they want to be between 70 grains and probably 120, 125 grains. Spay rods, you can go 168, 10, 12 feet of T14. These are going to top out comfortably and cast well and consistent somewhere like 10, 11 feet of T11, 120 grains right in that range. So no matter what you're doing, if you look at your length versus your weight per foot, you can figure out if that's going to fall into that 70 to 120 grain window. Line it with an appropriate Skagit. Again, we're going with short rod as a spay rod, short spay line. And then we know that we've got a fly we can cast, a tip that can cast the fly, a head that can cast the tip, and the whole system balances nicely on this rod. We're set up to go spay fishing. Same difference if you went to a Scandi line, we're going to probably bump this down to about 400 grains over 29 feet. An 8-weight spey would probably be 475, 500, 525. Depends on the 8-weight, depends on who makes it. So big differences between switch and spey, big differences between single hand and switch. So as long as you think about that stuff and line it accordingly, you're gonna have a lot of fun with a switch rod. The next point would be usability of these things. I think with switch, you had a lot of guys that really didn't want big, long spey rods. So they thought they're getting off the fence and coming to the spey party was a switch rod. And that's good. They're getting into a two-hand game. I mean, you got two grips, you can use it, and this works like a spey rod. Very much so, and we'll see that here in a minute. There's a lot of people that would say absolutely don't do that because they're going to be tougher. And I think what they mean by that is when you have a shorter rod, you got a little bit smaller D-loop in that you're not going to get the height to bring the apex of the D-loop up. So they kind of form and fall faster than a spey rod would of a longer length. That might be arguable. And the timing's a hair different. You're definitely going to get some length in a rod. You're going to get forgiveness as a benefit of that. So if you go with a spey rod, to have good casting skills or to get with an instructor that's competent is going to help you out a ton. But a switch rod, new to the spey game, for fishing down and across, and an instructor and a well-matched setup, 3 or 4 hours later you'll be casting and banging them out and catching fish. It's doable. It's going to be a little tougher if you go at it and just, you know, jump into it and read blogs or grab your old 8-weight line for single-hand 8-weight rod and throw it on there. It's going to be a hard road, most likely. And then I think that it gets down to like who wants a switch rod. You could cast 5-weights from float tubes in lakes. You can cast 8-weights for spey rods, as spey rods for steelhead and salmon. And you know, I think that guys that are single-hand casting and want the distance a little easier with less false casting, maybe they're having some shoulder problems and want to do a 2-hand style rod, or just guys that like using lighter tackle and I think it's fun. These are a blast to catch steelhead with. Well, any rod's fun to catch steelhead with, I guess. But switch rods are a blast to catch fish with and a legitimate way to go target anadromous species.
Perfect right now. We couldn't ask for better conditions. I'm starting to get a little green due to the rain. Low pressure, steady drizzle. If we get consistent like that, just with maybe a little spike in the water, fish will start moving. Be good, real good. The thing about being a steelheader, you gotta be on the water when everything's right, you know? If you're hearing about the news, you're not making the news. Here we go. Fish on. All the birds are chirping. Wildlife's happy, and when wildlife's happy, steelhead are typically happy. After what we've been through, I mean, after what anybody's been through winter steelhead fishing sometimes, missing fish is about the worst thing you could want to do. You know, you work this hard, you're out here in the rain, freezing your bottom off, and next thing you know, you miss a fish because you weren't paying attention. You're thinking about how cold you are, or next cast, or whatever you got on your mind, and you missed your fish. Well, that's a waste. Cast count starts over. Just sucks. Only person you can blame is the guy holding the rod. It's barometric pressure, right? The fish has a swim bladder in their body. It's basically like a balloon. That balloon at low pressure gets, you know, there's a lot less pressure on it, and they can regulate their elevation in the water a little better. It gets them up, free flowing higher in the water column. And with low pressure, you always typically get precipitation, which brings our water level up, gives them reason to move as well. You get high pressure, and you get that high pressure, the fish get that bloated feeling, they want to hunker down. The water level's dropping typically in high pressure, so they get in a run like this, and they'll just hunker down, wait for the conditions to change. We call those fish stale fish. Typically they get stale because they sit. But today this afternoon anyway, we had some high pressure this morning, but slow pressure this afternoon, it kicks in, we get a little bit of drizzle. It's good stuff, good conditions. Even I, a guy who casts a lot, arm gets a little tired. Just switch arms. Good reason to learn to cast with the other hand. So we'll go lefty for a while.
All right, we're tying some tube flies here today, and special guest Bruce Berry's with us, and we're gonna go on with some of the better tube fly materials out there right now. I think most accessories, most availability of color, the most schemes you can get are going to be brought to you by Pro Tube, and we're going to start today with one of their new UV 4040 tubes. And we're going to start by tying one of my favorite winter's tube flies, the Lady Gaga. So we just start, I just put the whole tube on, don't worry about cutting it. And take our thread, you know, color of thread on some of these big flies doesn't matter much, but dark color is black, you know, it's the most common. I wish it was cheaper, they don't do that. We just give about 7 good turns. Give her a rip, trash. Here we go. We need something to prop our feathers. You know, a lot of what we do is we try and make flies look alive. You know, I'd like to think that steelhead would eat something that looked more alive than dead. I can't prove that that's always the case, but we're gonna try. So what I like to do is just give a little bit of a dubbing ball. A little one, so that some of those feathers we're about to put on it.
Can't screw it up.
I just like to lick it, and what I do when I'm tying fast is I just twist this thing that I've, the dubbing in the strand on, I just twist it right on the thread. I start wrapping it, it kind of makes like a nice little chenille. And you go length, then right back over the top of itself for height. Pull the extra back, tie it right off in front. And here's one of my favorite fly tying tips that I heard when I was little. Every time you tie something in, if you act like you're finishing the fly, you're gonna get a lot neater fly in the end. I mean, you could hide thread wraps at this point in time, but extra thread wraps here might be extra thread wraps at the end. Might be bumps in the body that you don't want. So every time I tie in a material, I try and finish it real neat before I tie in the next material. So from here, we're gonna put something up against this. And I'm gonna go with just a pink schlappen feather. Now, a lot of guys like to use these real sharp, opaque ends of the feather. I personally like this kind of chickaboo, marabou stuff at the bottom. This gives, you know, a little more life to your fly. So what I like to do is I'll tie in by the tip. I'll find a point at which I think I'm going to get a proper amount of wraps. Which on something like this, it's usually about 1 1/8 inches. Pull it in. Feather faces toward me. You can tie anything in 3 wraps. So we go 3 wraps. I fold the tip back, put in another 1 or 2 for good measure, and again, you can see I've tied it up very neat. Even before we've cut the fly, it's tied in very neat. I'm going to lick my fingers. I'm going to pull the feathers back so that they give a nice flow. Water direction when we're fishing will be this way. You know, give a nice flow like it's swimming. Make a few wraps. Now, you don't need to get too crazy with some of this stuff. A lot of people overdress their flies, especially when they start tying flies with any size. Overdressing is a common problem. You'll notice they might still look good. When you go to actually fish them, they become really hard to cast. So we get to right there, and again, we can tie off anything with 3 wraps. So what I'm going to do here, so I'm just going to go 1, 2, 3, and you can see we've cut some of the fibers. I'm going to give it a fold. 1, 2, 3. And you can see we've got a nice finished fly. As for this hackle tip, if you've tied everything in correctly, you should be able to break that off. Perfect. Don't even need the scissors. This thicker end, should probably cut this guy off. Reach right in there. Perfect. Now you see, now we've got that little dubbing ball. Feathers are propped up nicely against it. We've used,
Step back, you won't be in shot.
we got a lot of life to the fly. So,
There.
before we do this next
Angle is, but
bit here, let's clean it up. Again, always keep those nice flies. Most steelhead flies have tails. And what we have here is we have some of the pre-barred Montana ostrich here. This is really good stuff. See how sharp it is? You know, sometimes you get that ostrich a little fluffy. I like this really sharp edges. Believe it or not, still ostrich. Still moves well. So what I like to do is take 4 or 5 strands. And we're going to put it in kind of like claws, if you will. So we're going to cut this. And I always like to pretend. So I put it up there and make sure they're going the right way. Pretend about length, and I like to go about double double the schlappen feathers. And again, one, I might do two on this because we're going to put another bunch. We're not putting them in over the top. We're not putting them quite directly on the side, about a 45. This is going to give good direction. Now, let's cut up another clump here. Maybe on the other side. Again, 4 or 5 strands. Should I wait on that?
No.
Okay. Got a rogue one here, there we go. And again, we'll lay these in like so. They get about the same length. You don't want one side longer than the other, that's just weird. So we'll put that in about to 45. Again, here we did 2 wraps the first time. We'll go 1, 2, 3. And I think those are gonna be pretty good. Now, to keep these maintained during the fly, at any point in time, you can always just lick your fingers. And it keeps these bad boys a little weighted, a little wet, and keep them right out of your way. So let's grab the butt ends of this, and I like to trim them physically as close as I can get them. So if I'm using scissors, I bring them all the way back, sometimes even back behind the butts. Give it a nice pull, and you get a nice even edge there. Take time to throw the trash away. Here we go. We're gonna put in a few more wraps right here. Keep everything kind of nice and level. That way when we go from here on out, again, we get good, flat, good looking flies. Okay, so we're gonna tie in some tinsel. And tinsel does a couple things for the flies. Not necessarily this fly, but flies in general. What it does mainly is it segments a body. You know, we've all seen tinsel on trout flies. Segments a body, and it gives durability to the fly, gives longevity. Even on these big flies like this, you start wrapping in Mylars, they're pretty tough, but if they cut, they fray. You know, if you wrap them and then you're wrapping that over your thread, helps to control everything, contain everything, and make it a little bit tougher. Now, what I like to do with any of these materials is most times when we look at a fly from the side, we don't want to build them up, you know, stack everything that we're tying in on one thing. So I'm going to put the tinsel actually on the side facing toward me. And I want to get a good, you know, what I think this body gap will be, I want to tie in about that much tinsel. Again, it'll make it level down the fly. So I'm just going to give it a few wraps here and there, all the way down. Boom. And we're going to go back the other way. And we're going to expose as much of that pink as we can. I'm not trying to fill her up with that stuff. So we got a tinsel piece. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to use this saltwater Mylar. It's a little thicker, we get a little more per wrap. It's got a nice iridescence, so it's going to basically reflect anything we tie underneath it. You know, so the fish sees something, you know, most things in nature are lighter on the bottom, darker on the top. So the view the fish would get looking up, we're going to have a light color on the bottom. And as we progressively make the fly, we'll get darker as we go forward and up. So again, I'm going to lay this, but I'm not going to lay it back right over the tinsel. I might lay this right down the top. That way we're not building mass. Kind of keeping it nice even, and I'll put it in about as long as the tinsel I just put in. And the same idea, right over the same thread wraps if we can. Again, this binds the thread wrap, binds the material. We don't get a lot of slippage. Slippage is bad. We've all done that. And go out, tie it. Now I like to come back and I like to make sure both these materials are tied as tight to the feathers that we've tied as we can get them. There's no gap. You know, you gotta be pretty particular about things like this, but when you get a gap in there, sometimes when I look at it, I'm not that happy about what I've tied. Will the fish mind? I'm not sure, maybe. So let's go forward to where we're gonna finish these wraps. Here we go. And we're gonna start with the Mylar. And I always like to do one almost full wrap. That way you know you got good coverage. You can see it. See, there we go. We got a little slippage. Let's go back. Feathers getting wild, so we give them a lick. Pull a little tighter. Oh, that's good. Go another one. That one's being feisty. There we go. Now we can go forward. Oh yeah. A little bit of overlap is good because it builds. You can see as I go forward here, we get a nice reflective base. We're going to go all the way to where we finish the thread. Nice even body. And if that black showing through there really upset you, you can use pink thread. Mylar stuff's pretty easy. Again, 3 wraps will tie off about anything. There you go. You can cut it now, you can cut it after the tinsel. I always like to have things out of the way. Cut that. Don't think that's long enough to use again. No, we'll go with the tinsel. Now, ultimate strength, we go counter wrap against the wrap of the body material we put down. That way they bind each other. So we'll go the opposite way and we'll go 1. And ideally we want to be out on the 5th wrap. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we're out. Right there where we tied it in. If you went from tying to finish, we got 5 wraps. That is the optimal amount of ribbing. Not my rule that I made, but that's good. It segments a fly well. You can do more, you can do less. 5 is the number I shoot for. Now with the wire material, if we fold over against itself 180 degrees and we bind on that a couple of times, we know that isn't going to slip either. There we go. We got about half this fly done. We're going to cut this off. Now always have 2 pairs of scissors, one for cutting wire. Usually those should belong to somebody else. So your scissors stay good. We're going to put up another dubbing ball here. We're going to prop some more material against it. Now, basically these intruder style flies, you're tying 2 separate flies on the same tube or Waddington shank or whatever you're using. You're tying a small fly in the back and a big fly in the front. And a lot of people make the big section in the front so big that they can't see the section in the back. So they've tied almost an entire fly back here that nobody gets to see. The space in the middle, and if you keep your flies sparse, you get to see the whole thing. And it's not even that you get to see it, the fish might get to see the whole thing. And whatever decisions that fish need and whatever attributes for an answer they need to take flies, maybe they see it better. Maybe they just want a giant glob of black, I don't know, but I've done fairly well on this fly and I like to tie them about as sparse as I can get them. So here we go, we're gonna make another. And this little stretch of dubbing that I'm gonna twist up, I'm gonna make it a little longer, a little thicker than the one we put in the back. I'll show you here in a second. So this one's, see, it's got a little more material in it. So we tie it in again, lick the fingers, twist the ends, give us some thread here. Just pinch it to the tube, pinch it to the thread, and we just start twisting. And it'll make a nice quick, dubbing loops are nice, but we're not gonna pick this material out. This material's hidden underneath stuff. So don't need to get that particular. Again, we'll hide our thread wraps. We'll go forward from there, right over the top. Little figure 8 for strength, back. And again, I'm gonna pull all the loose material I can forward, come right in front 3 times. We have a dubbing ball. And it is a little bit bigger than the last one. Some of these hairs are driving me a little crazy, so we'll cut those right out the way. And here we go. We're gonna prop some material up against it. And to prop with a prop, we're gonna use, I want this bad boy in the front to be big. I want it to be big enough that this can slip back underneath it. So we like to use, there's a lot of materials out there, cost effective wise, good craft fur is tough to beat. Now we try to use craft fur, the same color as the material we're going over, again so we can be sparse. Maybe it adds a little color to the fly. It's not necessarily the purpose, but if you have a real bad clash in your underhair with stuff you might be going off, might not be as appealing to your eye. Anything you can hide like this is a good way to do it. Let's go from a corner here. Cutting out of the middle is not necessarily the most effective way to handle your stuff. So there's a few ways you can do it. I always like to grab a pretty good clump, pretty raw. I cut the ends nice and close. If you leave your ends on your material long, you don't really know where you've started. And any of the shorter stuff, so I'll grab it kind of right in the middle, right? And this stuff, I'm not gonna comb it all out, I'm not gonna take that much time, but in the middle, because that's where I'm gonna tie this stuff in, I'm gonna go from right there. And what we're gonna do, maybe these really long ones, I'll pull those out. Here we go, and we're gonna tie this in right in the middle. Again, with this, it's gonna be 1, 2, 3. Now I like to just smash them. We can spread them out at this point in time. Pretty good, about halfway around the tube. And you can just smash this back. We're just gonna tie that right back over the top itself like so. And it's being a bugger. Hang on. We'll get it. Come back on it a little bit. Oh, there we go. There we go. No. We're smashed up real tight to that diving ball. Might have to build up on it. It's going to be a good one. We'll see if we can fix that when we put that second layer. That might help our base. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to slide the tube forward a little bit. If I can, I'm going to grab by the hook guide. I'm going to turn the fly upside down. So I can repeat the same exact process I did on the top, on the bottom. We get a nice even flow to the fly. If you're going to air heavy material on the top, that'll keep the fly right. If you put too much on the bottom, then you put a set of eyes, you might get a fly that spins. And flies that spin, maybe you should fish spinners. We don't necessarily like flies that spin. So again, right next to the clump we took out of the patch, take another good patch. Use our material that we don't need, right in the middle. Perfect. Good. Tie it in. Now, why these things on these tubes are really nice or nice around, you can kind of set things even before they get going. There's one. Pull this back, here we go. Now we're getting there. Same idea. Even it out. Pull this back, fluff her around. Make sure we got 180 degrees of coverage. Now let's see if we can bind. There we go. Couldn't beat her with small amount of material, but we beat her with a large. There we go. Now we got a pretty good clump of base there. I would almost say that's a little thick, so we're going to take some of it out. You know, some of this longer material. I want to be able to see some of this. So again, if I'm going to remove material, I'm going to remove most of it off the bottom. This ensures that my fly rides correctly. And again, we want to see a little bit of that body through there. The prop, it's going to do its job. Some of these really long ones, we'll trim those. And you notice I'm not cutting them flat, I'm angle cutting them. So that again, I don't like real flat edges on my flies. Things in nature aren't super flat. You know, on this one, maybe I'll leave a few of those long fibers too. Fly tying isn't an exact science. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna slide this, come back around to the correct position. Here we go. Fly's looking a lot better now. And this is where we put in our next section. Ooh, that's nice. That's real nice. Got a little much down here, so let's take this. Oh, now we're cooking with gas. Got a few long ones over here. Again, things you finish now, you don't have to finish later. So, things always go, like we said, from light to dark.
Okay.
So again, I like this real kind of fluffy marabou. We're going to tie it in by the tip. And we're going to go light blue first. Feather face toward me. 1, 2, 3. Fold the tip back. 1, 2. Give it some space. Here we go. Make sure the tip's out of the way. If we can get 2.5, 3 wraps with this, that's great. Again, we're not looking for 10 wraps of marabou. Marabou's a pretty powerful material. If you get too many marabou wraps, you can't see any of the work you've just done. So there we go. Even it out, get a good look. Maybe this one we only need 2, let's find out. Well, that's looking pretty nice. We might just leave it right there like that. Pull it forward. Come through here. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Should be good. A lot of material. Plenty, just to veil over what we're after. Pull out our waste. Now I like to go slightly back over the ends of what we've done, just to make sure we don't lose it. Pull that tip out. Here we go. Ooh, that's looking real nice. Let's take our second color marabou. It's just a darker blue than the first color. We may even use less wraps on this one. Might be 1.5 wraps. Again, this is just a veil over the color we put, just tied in. Here we go, tied in by the tip. Right back over the threads you tied the butts with. 3, fold the tip back. Perfect. Make sure your tip's out of the way. Make sure all our fibers are flowing the right way. We go 1. A lot of stuff you can even out just by blowing on the fly. 2, I think that's plenty right there. Let's put a wrap on that. Nice. Fold it all back. Again, right up to where we finished the fly. Let's make it almost like we're finishing a nice head on a fly. Oh, that's perfect. We know it's all tied there. We know it's all in there. We'll cut the butt. Stem off perfectly. There's that tip we tied in. Just give that a tug. It'll come right out. No need for scissors there. You can see we got a fly that's got some mass to it. This is the way it's going to fish. And because it's not made of materials that, we're not talking materials that resist water so much when we talk about flies that are tough to cast, it's materials that hold lots of water. Rabbit strip hold lots of water, you know, the leather on the back. Rubber legs hold lots of water and they resist the water. So you can put quite a bit of material on it if it's material that doesn't absorb a lot of water. So at this point in time, we're going to add a few strands of flash. And you can get crazy with flash. Now I'll tell people, for me flash, the more of it you put on, if you get to the river and don't like it, you can take it off. The less you put on, if you want flash, it's tough to add. You can't, it's hard to super glue things to the fly after you're already out there. But with this one, we'll just go, you know, 4 or 5 strands, 6 strands. I'm gonna find that midpoint, go like this. And again, I'm gonna do about a 45 like I did with the ostrich. I'm gonna spread it out my thumb a little bit, and I'm gonna put in one, I'm just gonna do 2 wraps initially. I'm gonna grab the material, I'm gonna go right around this tubing and bring it to the other side. And again, we're gonna pull it over here, and I'm gonna get another couple wraps, make sure. Now I'm gonna go over it, do my 3 wraps. Again, just like we're finishing the head of a fly, nice and neat. This flash can get a little squirrely, we'll finish that at the end. Just lick it, slick it back. Great. Now, we could wait to put our eyes on, but we're not going to. We're gonna put the eyes on right now. And I'll tell you why. Because you're gonna get a lot more leeway of hiding these hackle tips with the schlappen feather if we put the eyes on now. If you finish the fly completely and put the eyes on, you'll find out sometimes the eyes end up further forward than you like. As opposed to tying up to them, you end up tying, then making the fly longer in that gap. Again, it might not drive the fish crazy, but it drives me crazy. So if we put our eyes on now, start the eyes on the far side, come back to you. On things like rabbit, eyes, I always do 5 wraps initially to hold them. And then we're just gonna do a series of figure 8s back around until we get a good thread wrap base. And then I'll show you a trick that I like to do is, once I get them on there, if I really like where they're at, I'll go around like this. You just go around the eyes and really bind the thread against the eyes. So it chokes it down in there, really tight. They're not going anywhere. Again, it'll condense the plastic a bit. Now, this is how much room we have to finish the fly. Instead of using the whole tube, if we're gonna put the eyes on last, that's what you get. So right now we're gonna tie in some hackle tips. And again, I want these to go back to about that ostrich. So I'm gonna measure them in here like this. Great. Pull some of this material away from it. And again, we're not gonna tie it straight over the back, we're gonna angle it a little bit. So this is a good feather there. That might be a little much still. Here we go. Perfect. Lay it in. And you guessed it. 1, 2, 3. Now, this is where you just make sure you like where it's at. Don't cut it at this point in time. Take your next feather, measure it in contrast. Great. Perfect. Now I'm going to lay this one in. Now you notice I've tied these across from each other so they go out each opposite sides. And we're going to do 3 more wraps here to bind these feathers down. We're going to make sure that they're buddies. You don't want one going one way and one going the other way. Those look pretty good. When they resist the water, they're going to be buddies. They're going to slick back. You can always double check right to the right spot. If you like where they're at, fold the butt ends over the top, bind them down, go right back over. Some of these hackle feathers get pretty expensive. You slide them out while you're casting, you're not going to like that too much. See that little bit of extra strength ensures that you won't lose your nice hackle tips. Perfect. There's one. This guy got away from me. Here we go. Great. Now to finish the fly completely, got one more strip of just black schlappen. And again, I'm going to use a little bit of this fluffy Chickabouie, Maribouille stuff at the bottom. So I'm going to give it about, maybe an inch and an eighth total. Go like this, go up a little bit. We'll strip some of the fibers off. This will be real good. Finishing the fly. Lick the feathers. We got a piece of flash getting a little swirly in there, so let's slick that back. Here we go. Feathers face toward me. 1, 2, 3. Tip comes back. 1, 2, 3. Here, I would cut this one early because we are finishing the fly. There we go. Slick everything back. And it's just a turn and fold. Get that nice even flow. Here we go. Now these wraps, we're going to hide everything we don't want to see with this and finish the fly completely. So 1 wrap there. And that first wrap of feather, again, I like to go back over the top of itself. That's added strength, added volume, and minimal amounts of wraps. Here's 2. Ooh, we're almost good at 2. We'll put more, about half a wrap more for good measure. Well, that's looking good. And again, if I'm going to err, I'm going to put material on top of the fly as opposed to underneath. We'll cut it in right there. Great. Again, slick everything back. 3 wraps held the feather. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Great. Ooh, nice. Now let's finish this fly. Gonna build up a little thread so we don't see any tubing around the eyes. Anything we don't want to capture here. Here we go. Great. You can super glue it. You can do all that stuff. Typically my flies don't last that long. Either fish tear them up or we lose them. So we're just gonna do a whip finish. Finger whip finish here. I do 5 on the first go. And my first whip finish is always held by the second whip finish of 3 or 4. I'm going golly. So again, we'll take our razor blade and cut. I leave about 1/8 of an inch, like so. Torch, hold the fly vertically, heat source, and I like this. Just go right down. Had some coffee this morning. Perfect. And right there. Oh, that's a good look. her there. Like Lady Gaga herself, just dirty and nasty.
Trev, you might give that like a 3-second break and say this is something you can tie yourself. It's also available from Montana Fly Company.
When we get on your face, you're gonna say something like that. Let me slide through the boss.
I'm gonna say
Warning. It's
good thinking, Bruce.
Yeah, just
Auto hit that big ball. Wait a minute.
You're all pricked up for picture time. How's she looking, Bruce?
Looks good to me.
Good. This is a fly you can tie yourself if you enjoy tying flies, or it's available from Montana Fly Company and any of the good shops in the Northwest that carry good steel flies. Probably be selling this.
All right, so we're gonna put together an orange rambulance. This is a fly that's one of my flies, and it's available through Montana Fly Company. So you can get this through local fly shops for steelhead or tie your own. And what we do is we start with a Pro Nano tube. I've pre-installed the weight with a little bit of Zap-A-Gap so that it's solid, and as I'm tying and paying attention to coming up to the front end of the fly, this isn't moving around on me, so my proportions stay good. I've got a large orange hook guide and a Pro Nano tube clear. We're just gonna make the connection on the needle. And the needle's really kind of a cool deal in and of itself. It's got 2 flat sides, milled flat, and a taper. So you essentially have 4 corners grabbing it. It's just a pressure fit system. So slide the needle on, or slide the needle into the vise, give the needle a little push till it doesn't want to go anymore, and you can spin hair, it stays. It's a great, very simplistic device for tying tube flies. So with that, we're going to start some thread.
I think I lost some soldiers. Oh no.
Not too bad.
Shoot.
Well, we'll get those in when we're done.
Carvers.
No problem. Right, so the original Rambulance was called Rambulance Blue, and that's a combination of blue, black, orange, and kingfisher. The orange Rambulance came about just to give it a high vis for glacially silted rivers, something like the Sandy River in Oregon, any place that gets snow melt or fresh hot fish just into coastal rivers, or most rivers will react really well to this flame orange color. It's been a very successful fly. So what I'm going to start, and this is a dubbing bump. This is called MFC Fish Dope Dubbing. It's their steelhead dubbing. It's great for just dubbing directly to your thread or putting in a dubbing loop and fuzzing out. We'll tease a few of those fibers out. Okay, step 2 for the Rambulance is an orange dyed pheasant tippet. Just to prep that, I'm just going to sweep the main fibers back. I'm tying it in tip first, so I'm getting my tying point ready. And just before we wrap, I want to fold those fibers just a little bit. Just like that. There's enough of a handle here, I don't need hackle pliers. So with that, I'm just going to advance this whole feather. And part of the Rambulance is, when Intruders came out with Dec Hogan's book and Ed Ward's original Intruder, I don't know if this is really an Intruder style. It's maybe a mix between a Scandinavian style fly and an Intruder, but in tying lots of large flies, I found that somewhere between 3, maybe 2 3/4 to 3 inches long, fish seem to accept. And then after fishing a lot of flies that were big and really hard to cast, no matter what weight rod or what size scanty line you were fishing with or Skagit line, they were just hard to get out of the water and get going. So this one I wanted to build bulk and movement, but something that retained that nice size that we want to fish in the wintertime or late fall for summer steelhead, and something that was still easy to cast and just pleasurable to fish. So the back end's pretty much set up, and I've got a rear wing and a front wing. Our first wing is going to be a softer orange. The front wing is going to be a much hotter orange. So just 2 tones of flame coming at you. So with this, we just grab a nice big hunk of this craft. This fly would also lend itself to natural fiber wings like fin raccoon or an Arctic marble fox. I originally did it with craft fur, so I'm going to tie it as original style today for you guys. And I get rid of some of the short stuff that just builds unwanted bulk for the tie-in. Now when you're sizing a rambulance, you can make mini rammers, you can make extra large rammers, so I base the size off the starting point with this pheasant tippets. Most of the good ones are gone. I have a really huge one, and if you want to scale down the rambulance, just start it by scaling down the feathers, and that'll give you some sizing. And what I mean by that is once you get the feather on, I want these to be differential length so that they flow well. So as I sweep these back and lay that wing over there, I want the wing maybe 5/8 to 3/4 of an inch longer than the pheasant hackling. So I've got my wing length set. And the tie-in's prepped. So this is another one where I'm going to start with just 2 soft placing wraps. Now the wing is fairly tight over the top, and in the water it's not going to move a bunch. So with 2 soft placing wraps, and then put a little thumb and forefinger in there, and on the video you can probably see that start to splay. So it encases most of the top of the tube. That way when it hits water and shrinks up, it's going to be allowed to move in the water. And we create some volume and some movement without bulk and nasty casting. I'm going to cover that up with a few thread wraps. Like I said before, binding a wing to a tube is very easy just because the tube naturally compresses and the hair is easy to tie in. Okay, so from here, we're going to put in a little bit of tinsel. Did you guys see that spool of tinsel that was sitting right here a minute ago? Here's a different tinsel in a different bag.
Let's see that. Monsanto.
That's going to be a new fly too, the Monsanto.
Monsanto Carl.
GMO flies.
Hot Carl should be that one.
Oh, this is a fucking rammer. When you don't catch them on it, it's a wambulance.
That's right. When you catch them, it's a rambulance. When you don't catch them, it's a wambulance. All right, so I like to put that rib in kind of in the bottom of the far side, away from the tire. Get that wire out of the way by spinning it around the vise somewhere. Then I'm going to coat the tube. It's going to give my Mylar body some traction. I don't know why, but when you coat the black and put the pearlescent flash over it, it kind of gives you a nice peacocky effect. Peacock-esque coloration. So this should make sense now. When I glued that weight onto the fly, now it's stationary, and as I'm working on the fly, this isn't going to move forward and change my dynamics of the fly, so I know it stays put. So I like to glue these weights in first. Good weights for this. Originally it was with a drop weight. I've moved to the tungsten raw weights just because these pack a punch and hide away in the fly really nicely. Clip that out. Pull that wire tag backwards. A couple of wraps over it. More of that Montana Fly Company Fish Dope dubbing. This is great. It's a mix of rabbit and Angora, about 50-50. So it dubs easy and it's spiky. It's got color match flash, UV flash. And as I said, it works well in the dubbing loop. And it works well, just dub straight to the thread. Now here, I'm gonna go over the top, put my finger on it, get a full wrap. Now we're ready for our overwing. This is gonna be a hot orange. Get that wing prepped. And right here, you can see there's a ton of that. This actually has almost like real hair. It has a nice differential length in fiber, so we'll take out a bunch of the fluff and get rid of a lot of the bulk. And for this wing length, we're just going to match the rear wing length. It's right on the money, so I'll prep my tie-in point. Straight over the top. 2 soft placing wraps, and we can see how thin that wing is. I get in here and just work it a little bit with the thumb and forefinger, and that just splays out nicely. So now we've got a big wide wing. When it hits the water, it's going to firm up just like it should, and it's going to be free to move. And the movement's great. Now we'll put some locking wraps on it. There's our second wing. Slight upwards angle is the lateral line for the fly. Advance that forward as you go over the top, lock it, bring the thread backwards to the tie-in point of the wing. Put that flash at the angle you want it. And these guys I'll cut one from each side long, one from each side short. Layering your flies in different lengths is great for movement, so it doesn't just hit the water clump and kind of act like a wet sock in the water. Okay, we're getting close to finishing up the fly. Now we're going to go with a hot orange dyed marabou. This is fluorescent orange. We've got a nice handle on the stem, dual side facing the rear of the fly, shiny side facing forward. We'll spin this guy wet fly style. There's one wrap. Two wraps. Three or four wraps looks like plenty. Gonna overlay a little bit of copper flash. Cut that in half. You're going to get a little bit more over the top than the first lateral line flash we put on. thread back, put the flash in position. We'll cut these at some different lengths. These are going to be the longest thing on the fly here, front end. Okay, good. This is a large saddle hackle, fluorescent fire orange. I'm going to leave a little bit of that chickaboo fluff at the base of the feather. The only thing you really need to do in prepping a feather like this to leave that chickaboo is make sure that your stem is thin enough to wrap. So we're good there. I'm going to go with maybe an inch, inch and an eighth of stem. That'll give me maybe 3 wraps. 2 to 3 wraps. Fold the hackle a bit. Two full turns, this third turn should show me the fluff. There we go. Move that forward and turn this just because the tie was on the bottom. Bend that stem over and cover with some wraps. Run just a hair bit of Zap-A-Gap down the thread, sweep everything out of the way. Just for safety measure, we put a few turns of whip finish on there.
Alright, I'm gonna tie a fly called the Shrimpton. First thing you want to do is start your thread off the back of the tube here, right where the hook guide goes in. This thing's sliding. And the first thing you do is just make a dubbing loop, the very back end right here. Secure it down with a couple wraps, doesn't have to be real big, couple inch long loop. Slide your dubbing spinner or whatever you use in your loop, and then you want to wax it. So whatever you put in there stays. Next, you take some dubbing. This is just a blend of pink and gore goat and some flash dubbing. It's ice dub. Just take a chunk of it here. Just want to pop it in the top of this dubbing there. Just like that. Spread it out a little. And then the next thing you want to do, grab some Amherst, any color. I like to use pink. Cut a chunk of it off, probably like 15 or 20 fibers. You just want to make sure it's not too long coming out the back. I like inch and a half or so. So I just give this a spin here. Slide these in. And then what I do is I take a needle, I you just want to separate these Amherst fibers down through this loop, or else when you spin them, they'll get stuck together and you'll end up with a big clump of Amherst instead of a hackle. So just spread them out, kind of evenly space them. Probably end up being about an inch and a half long of this Amherst here. Alright, sort these out a little bit. Let's give it a spin. Just kind of pick these out as you go so they're not sticking together. Basically that's what you want, is just a brush, a hackle. And then I take this little tool, it's just a piece of Velcro on a stick, and I just pick this dubbing out so it's not so thick. You get a little more length coming off of it. Just like that. Now you're ready to just wrap it on. Just pull the fibers back as you go. This is going to make a little ball of dubbing at the back of the fly to prop up the rest of the materials, including the Amherst. Be your rear hackle, basically. Alright, and as you get to the Amherst, you just want to brush these guys back, or else they'll get trapped and be pointing forward, which you don't want. This should make like 1 to 1.5 turns. If you can make it like 1 turn, it's ideal. Just like that. Lock that down. Couple turns. And cut that. Alright. So you got this rear hackle here. Next thing I'm going to do is put the rear wing on. Try to just use some cream colored marble fox. And I'm a decent clump of this, but I'm going to pull most of these this under fur out of it. You don't want too much back there. So what I do is I just hold it by the tip, or like towards the tip of the fur, and I just pull this bushy under fur out. So you just get a thin wing like that. Doesn't have to be stacked or anything. Just lay that over the top. Extend it a 1/2 inch past where the Amherst goes. So when it gets wet, you get a good taper. Once you tie it in, you can smash it down with your thumb and get that so it's going to splay out. And just lock this stuff down. You can just wrap it right down the tube. Make sure it's not coming out. About like that. Turn it off. Just going to secure all these tags down so we don't have anything sticking out. The next thing you want to do, take 2 pieces of golden pheasant tippet, some of the smaller side. Find another good one here. You just want to strip off, so you just have the tip of that feather. Do these the same length. These are going to be the eyes at the back of the fly. Just tie them in. Face the dull side facing out. So there's a bright side and a dull side. You want the dull side facing out. Just tie them on the side of the wing. On the back. That. And be about the same length if you can get it. Okay. So now you're ready to put your tinsel and your body down. So wrap your thread back to the back of the fly. I use silver wire for a rib. I'm gonna tie it on the closest side to me, because this will be my counter rib. So I'm gonna tie it on my side of the tube. Then I'm gonna take some large pearl mylar tinsel, secure it onto the top or the far side, either way. This is gonna be my body. From there, I'm just gonna wrap this mylar up over the top of this orange thread. God, this is irritating. Like, won't stay. Just work this mylar down, barely overlapping the wrap before it, so you get a nice smooth body. Once you get to where your thread's at, lock that down. That, and then I'm going to take my wire and go the opposite direction, just for durability, because that mylar will get cut by steelhead teeth. And you want your fly to last longer than one fish. Alright, so there's your, basically the front half of your fly is done. Alright, so you're gonna just put a little drop of head cement on this thread, so just again for durability for future use. Give it a good coating. And then the next step, you're gonna add your weight and a soft sonic disc to prop up the front of the fly. So this is just a tungsten drop weight, soft sonic disc in front of it. Slide that up nice and tight. Now you're ready to begin the front half of the fly. Let's close this down. So just start your thread right in front of that soft sonic disc there. Secure it down. And then I'm going to take, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take a piece of golden pheasant and tie it in tip first and use it as a hackle. It's a little stiff, so this will help prop things up, like the marabou and schlappan that's going to be in front of this. So I'm just going to sweep this back as I wrap it.
Get a BTS shot with the phone of that rhino slider on that fly.
Lock this guy down. Now you've got your golden pheasant wrapped in there. Next up, I'm gonna take 2 pieces of marabou. These are already prepped, ready to go, but a piece of shell pink and a piece of white. I'm just gonna lay them on top of each other. I usually do the pink over the white, but it doesn't really matter. Tie them both in at the same time, tip first. Right in front of your golden pheasant. Those guys off. And same thing here, I'm gonna grab both these stems. This can be a little tricky sometimes. On just like you would in anything else. Just trying to keep the stems close together. It helps if you have 2 pieces of marabou with a similar size stem. It'll go a lot smoother for you. This is Yeah, 3 or 4 turns of marabou. Kind of getting sloppy there. Pay this guy down. Need to take a brush and brush this stuff out. Make it look better. Your marabou should come back just to where the Amherst is, so you get this teardrop shape once the fly's done. So next step, take some shell pink schlappen. Same thing, tie it in tip first. Wrap it forward again. I always wet my fingers down, it helps get all over this hackle. Again, another 3 or 4 turns. There we go. Lock that down. Alright, so the last thing you want to do is you're going to put your wing on here. Which I like to use 2 hackle tips. These ones are already ready to go. I'll lay them on top, and I want them to come back about halfway through the marble fox on the tail. I don't want them to go all the way back. So I'm gonna lay those on top. Lay them down, give them 2 loose wraps, and then 1 tight one at the end. I should just lay them right in there. And what I like to do with these, just to make sure they don't come out, is I just take them, the stems, pull them back, and lock them down 1 more time. That way I know that my stems aren't gonna pull out of this fly after fishing it for a little bit. Cut those guys off. And just make a few final securing wraps. And give it a whip finish at the end.
We had a little grab there, and it's, you know, I'm not going to call it operator error. Again, it's your first day. When the fish grabs, a lot of times we don't know when it's going to happen. So you got to kind of be ready all the time. You find out the guys that are really good steelhead anglers, what they do is they pay attention a lot, right? If they're not the guys that pitch it out there and they go, you know, oh, look at that over there, or this over here. You know, they're not dillying on their phone or messing with their sunglasses. When that fly hits the water, it's business time. When it comes in and stops, if you want to do something, do it then. Because every time you pitch it out there, I mean, that's dangerous water. There's steelhead in those waters out there. So if you're ready,
okay.
You ready? Yeah. Up and around. You always have to be ready with steelhead. We don't know all the time exactly where they're going to come in the run. So every time that fly is out there and fishing, you got a chance. You need to bring that rod around. See where your rod is here? Mm-hmm. Your cast has to finish there. You've been finishing out here.
Okay.
So try it again. And out toward the river. There you go. Now come around. Hammer it. All right. Let's talk about that. It's all right.
Not as angled.
Right. So we're going to come here. We're just going to come here. And you're going to give it quite a bit of smoke.
Okay.
There you go. And let's see what happens right in about here.
I know my heart's pounding. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna add 1 foot of line.
Okay.
Cast. Good. Come around. You see yourself stop. You almost had it. You came right here and that pause. And the one thing about spey casting is you kind of have to learn it in pieces. But to make the cast work, it has to be fluid. So I'll help you with it one more time. And this isn't the best place to learn, but this is reality. I mean, this is steelhead fishing. We could learn on a pond. We're gonna go up and around. And once we start this,
Just a
continuous motion.
Okay.
Once your hands line up to your target, you're going. And you are in the game right here. Come on. That was better, actually.
different angle though.
Different angle. And you see where your hips are pointed? They're pointed straight downstream. So it's gonna be hard to cast this way, right? You said you played softball. Did you ever throw the ball like this? Yeah, it's tough. So when you want some to go in a direction, you have to turn your body that way.
Okay.
So let's get one more good cast. Make sure he sees it. Come around. That was not good.
I know.
I would say terrible, but we're going to say not good. We're going to do that one more time.
All right, we got to get a good one.
So what happens is you're just coming around too slow and you're worried about the trees. Don't worry about the trees. I'm telling you, the trees are there. Believe me, they're not going anywhere. We straight up whacked the tree. Follow that line around. Keep that rod pointed right at where you think that fly is. We're going to try and come back. We got a real drab, lot smaller profile fly. And typically, you know, that's kind of the staple idea. Sometimes a year, if they get a lot of pressure, I use really drab flies. So that eliminates the comeback factor, and we go the exact opposite. I'll use big gaudy flies instead. So it's not necessarily the fish knows what's going on, just show him something different. Well, say the average steelhead in our river is 25 inches. If we section this river off in 25-inch increments here, if there's a fish in our run, there's pretty good odds that the fish gets a chance to see the fly.
It'll come across them.
Yeah, that's right. If we move 12 feet between each cast,
Oh, well,
you might miss a 25-inch fish.
Oh, this is too short.
That's all right. Just go slow. And look at that. Put a little mend in there. Just get that line tight and below you. Perfect. We want the fly to lead the cast. So if you get a big bow and the line is leading, probably not great odds that the fish sees it. A mend, right? You mend something, you're fixing it correctly. So if your cast doesn't land at quite the right angle to the current, we mend it. Or if it lays out there and it's got a bit of slack in it, you take the slack out. The idea with a floating line is to get the fly fishing as quickly as possible, so you're covering as much water as possible. There's no reason to make a 70-foot cast that's full of slack to fish 30 feet of water.
Yeah.
I'd rather fish the 30-foot cast with zero slack. Pound it. Good. Mend it. Drop it down, let it ride. We'll talk about our... Oh yeah, just hang on. Good. Now on your mends, I just want you to lift the line.
Okay, out of the water a bit.
Well, not all the way to the fly, but just enough to get all the curvature out. Like I said, we want direct drive. Just like when that fish grabbed the first time. Did you see the fly was straight to the reel? That's what we want. And ready?
Yep.
I'd like to see you put that anchor further out in the river. So as you lift up, go out. Better. Good. Mend. Perfect. That's what we're after. Now what I always like to do is if this particular fish doesn't come back on your comeback fly, I always like to go back to the original fly. So we'll see what happens. Up and around. Nice. Mend. See how it's straight? This is not good. This, bad. This, worse. Straight is good. Good swing there. Good swing there. Okay, you should be in his wheelhouse right now, Sammy.
All right.
Good cast. Big man. Drop it down. You're on it. That's the seam. Come on. Okay, so on this next cast, when you sweep, bring your rod up a little higher, not as far back, and stop that rod tip a little higher in the front. Cast, yeah, we're not technically casting at a target on the river surface. Just give the line enough loft to let it turn over in the air. All right, you ready?
Yep.
Maybe we'll reel in just a skosh, just to give him one last shot about there. Now you go up a little bit and out toward the middle of the river.
Like that?
Yes. Now sweep. Yes.
All right.
I wouldn't even mend that. Just let that ride.
Let it ride.
Don't overthink it. Just let that line come tight and let it come across. The simplicity of the action is what makes it pure. Let's hope there's another steelhead down here a little further, down at the end of this tree line. Good, mend. Drop it down, you're fishing. Now, if you just stopped that rod just a little higher, would have laid out a little better, but that's still fishing. Aggressive lifting of the rod tip as you sweep into your D-loop. Ready? Ooh, better. You're definitely pausing a little bit. You're second guessing yourself. That's gonna be, in this particular run, the way the current's going, it's gonna be okay. We're gonna allow that to go. But you know, if you're fishing out on your own and nobody's there, I always like to grade myself on a 90% scale. If I think the cast was 90% correct, laid out 90%, I'm leaving it and going, stepping. If I think it was less than 90%, I'm probably gonna do it again. 2 steps. Now you can see once we get going here, I mean, we've moved quite a bit already, even with these short casts. This is the advantage of the spey rod. Single-handed rod in this, you know, it's not going to be all that fun. The speed at which we can move, I mean, you've never really even done this. So the speed at which we're moving, we've upped the percentage of your casts that are actually hitting the water. Ready? Sweep, up, 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 up. There we go. That's what I'm talking about. If you're gonna air high, don't air low. Let's follow that around. You're in good water here. Two steps. Go. Up, 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 up. Ooh, man. On that next one, let's not pause here. Come around, it's all one fluid motion. Just once you start a speed, you have to go with it. If you start with a very fast speed, the problem with spey is you can never slow down. If you start slow, you can always speed up. And you've noticed as an instructor, the people that go really fast, they're the toughest ones to teach. So slow is good. 2 steps. Ready? Up and around.
Just gotta get my foot in. Okay.
Good call. Safety first. Here again. We can get it up here. Make sure that elbow and that hand are in the same line. Ooh. 2 steps. So what we're doing basically is we're fishing the classic tail out.
We're hoping that a fish has come through that heavy water down below, and he's holding in front of what is actually forming that rock reef. They like to pull in the rest here in these places. If you looked at the river and we're gonna take a nap in the river, if you looked at the laziest place to be, that's probably where your steelhead will be.
Right before the rapid.
You got it. Front edge of the boulders. This time if fish grabs, you'll be ready, right?
Yeah.
Good. Better. Now remember how we talked about the anchor, the further out you put it, you can't put it out far enough. So every now and then they're creeping back in and kind of landing in line with your hip. That's, in the long run, as the casts get longer, it's going to be harder and harder to make good casts if they're back there like that. When you're talking about the patience of steelhead fishing, everything you do, the speed at which you do everything, we always talk about going fast, you know, spey rod, we can fish faster and faster and faster, but we're basically in a hurry to slow down. What, Sammy?
2 steps? Is that what
Unless a fish eats your fly, we never make the same cast twice.
All right. Well, I didn't want to interrupt you. Should I
Don't
just
worry about me.
step?
So when we're talking about, you know, being fast, we're in a hurry to slow down. So when we get to a piece of water and we're going to commit to fishing it, we're here. Nobody else is going to take this from us. Work the water you get, you know, 100%. 100% of the water you get, if you don't get one, at least you feel comfortable that you fished it correctly. If we're always racing to get, and we're you know, when we're walking fast or we're casting fast, everything picks up pace and you tend not to be as patient. You tend not to do as well. Twist. That's what I'm talking about. Much better. Don't be afraid to twist. You can let the butt of the rod go when you're fishing and just hold it in your right hand and relax. So this is the 2 problems we have with beginning steelhead anglers, is setting the hook, number 1, which you didn't do, which is fine. The other one is holding on to the line, right? So a lot of guys will teach to hold on to the line like this, right? If a steelhead grabbed your line, are you gonna remember to let that go?
No.
Yeah, that doesn't happen. So the more we relax, take this hand off, and while you're fishing, just relax the hand. It's gonna be much better for everybody. Mainly the fish. Twist. Yes. Add some line. Seam's creeping out. We'll add a little line to catch it. Go. And when we add line, we don't step. You paying attention? Good. So in this piece of water here, because of the hydraulics, if a fish eats your fly, it is going to explode. There's going to be a huge eruption in the water. You got to remember not to set the hook. It's called a boil. This flat water, when they boil, it's impressive. A lot of people go to point them out and then the reel takes off. Like, did you see that? Better. That grab is everything. I mean, the longer that fish holds that fly in his mouth, the better odds you stick him, right? Okay, 2 steps down, half a step out. Cast. Twist. Go. Ooh, you muscled it, it'll work. You feel yourself, you're getting back in that windshield wiper motion. You were really, before you got deep, you were being real smooth. That happened earlier, we want that to happen now. Out. Good. Twist. Go. That'll fish.